All right, Rockfin, do your thing. Come on, Rockfin, do your thing. All right, rockin' and rollin'. Let's do it.
I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Happy Friday, guys. Welcome, everyone. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. And welcome to Sabby's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Roundtable and Friday for the Sabby Show. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays. What is going on, everyone? I hope you're excited and ready for the weekend. I want to go ahead and give a quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Guys, thank you so much. I really do appreciate the support. I have 4 categories for those who are interested: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, and Ultimate. And all of their names are listed here. And they're also scrolling across the bottom of the screen as well. Quick shout out to Y Bernie Y, who just became a new Sabby patron. So thank you all so much. I really do appreciate it. And shout out to all of you who are members to my channel as well. It really does go far. It helps me out a lot, you guys. So I want to go ahead and give some shout outs to people in the chat. But beforehand, I do want to let you guys know I did do something to my neck. I don't know what happened, but I have a little bit of a stiff neck. So I'm not going to be making any sudden movements, if that makes sense. But I'm here. All right. Shout out Danibles 1. Howdy, Sabs. I'll share in 60 groups on Facebook. You rock. Oh, thank you so much. Danibles, if you could do me a favor in the chat, let me know how you found me. Something I used to do a while back and I kind of fell off of it, but always interested in knowing how new people find me. Shout out to Hannah G, said this should be good. Thank you. Thank you very much. What's going on? Miguel says, peace. Hi, Sabby. CBC voter says, I will listen today. Sabby Sabs. Doobie doo. What's going on? Kenshi Jones says, happy Friday, my love. Sabby. Welcome. What's going on? Saul says, sup. I like that. There was a guy I was friends with in undergrad. Every time he saw someone, he'd go, sup, Sabrina. It was never like, hey, Sabrina, or hi, Sabrina, or hello, Sabrina. Sup, Sabrina. Shout out to Gamer and Ganja for Life says hello. Whoops, wrong one. What's going on? Jean Catherine the Great says hello, everyone. Shout out to Joe OWS says good evening, family. What's going on? KM4Os says thanks, Doc. What's going on? Leroy, who's a Sabby member, says good day, comrades. Good day to you too as well. Shout out to Cool Blue, says good evening to you, Sabrina, and also everyone here. What's going on? Savannah says, hi, Sabby. Happy Friday. Hello. Happy Friday to you too. Shout out to Delthea, who's a Sabby member, says, thanks God it's Friday. Yes, this has been a long week. I don't know why. We had a thunderstorm last night, you guys, and I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm actually afraid of thunderstorms. They still scare me. It's just so loud and painful, and it makes me feel some kind of way. But yeah, that happened last night, and I woke up a couple of times because of it. Shout out to Sweary Fairy, says long time no see. I just saw you over at RBN. What's going on? Lennon says food shortage coming. It's been here for a while. Loving that $4 milk. Right? I guess it's a good thing I don't drink milk anymore. Shout out to Yasmin, says happy Friday. Anthony's here with a smile. Christian Gomez said you killed it on RBN earlier, Sabby. Thank you so much, Christian. I was a little in my feelings. What's going on, Pirate Alex says hi with a heart. Shout out to Hugo, who's a Sabby member, says hi, everyone. Greeting Jesus, who's a Sabby member, says Madeline alt-right. I'm a right. Oh, man. Oh, I got some things to say about Madeleine Albright. What's going on, Larry? Says hi, Sabby from Albuquerque. What is the weather like in Albuquerque right now, Larry? Is it warm and cozy? Shout out to Zen and Licka Pitts. We found you recently too in recommendation. Oh, wow. Okay. That's good to know. What is going on, Ashira? Says Jimmy Sabby got injured by the jab. I found you on RBN through TYTBS. Oh, okay. The TYTBS. I didn't know. Is Jimmy injured right now? I didn't know that. Huh. Interesting. Shout out to Nancy says, hello, Sabby. What's going on? Bill Bradley says, howdy, all. Shout out to Dead People. I love that name, by the way. Shout out to Dead People Things says, hello. Shout out to Anarcho says, at Sabby Sabs, hi. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what are we talking about tonight? Let me go ahead and share my thumbnail with you. This should be an interesting discussion. All right. Tonight, we're talking about Madeleine Albright dies. I have a lot to say about Madeleine Albright tonight, so, hold on to your horses. We're also going to talk about Joe Biden tanks, what is happening in the polls, and the food shortage, which Joe Biden mentioned last night. I'm going to touch on that. And I'm also going to touch on, is college still worth it today? And that's going to lead me into our call-in portion of the show. So for those of you who do want to call in, that link is at the very top. It's pinned to the live chat. Just click on that and you'll be able to call in. Okay, Ashura, I said you were injured as a joke and Jimmy's not currently. Oh, okay. Gotcha. I was about to say, I'm like, what? I did not know that. Okay. I am going to go ahead and get started with the first story. Let's see here. Do I have these in order? Okay. Right. I want to start with that first. Okay. Let's get started with Madeleine Albright. So Madeleine Albright has passed away. And what was interesting to me is the number of politicians on Twitter who were praising Madeleine Albright. I want to remind everyone that Madeleine Albright was a warmonger, not a nice lady. I'm going to show you some clips tonight. But the way that they were talking about her in such a way as if she was this gentle soul, this kind spirit. Nah. Nah. Mark Paniki said, ding dong, the witch is dead. Oh, we're going to get into it. But I also found it interesting that even, of course, mainstream media networks, when talking about Madeleine Albright, they wanted to start off again with identity politics, make it seem like she was this great person. I'm going to show you the mainstream media side of her, and then I'm going to show you the real side of Madeleine Albright and why I do not think people should be praising her and pretending like she was this magnificent person. So the first thing that I want to show you is a clip from CNN. They are going to talk about her passing, and I want you to pay close attention to the way that they start this discussion. So here we go.
We have some sad breaking news now.
Oh, hold on. For some reason, it's really low. Oh, okay. All right, here we go.
Former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright has died at the age of 84. She was the very first woman to hold that position, a strong diplomat, known to never mince words and
notice how they started off with she was the first woman to hold that position. Of course. I'll let it go on.
Remembered by many for those unique pins and brooches that she would wear to send subtle messages to world leaders. CNN's Richard Roth looks at her legacy.
As a diplomat, where tact and treading gingerly on contentious issues are the norm, Madeleine Albright was never one to mince words.
This is not cojones. This is cowardice.
Whether it was her colorful use of language condemning Cuba for shooting down U.S. pilots, or her strident assessment of the leader of Iraq.
I don't think the world has seen, except maybe since Hitler, somebody who is quite as evil as Saddam Hussein.
The Iraqi dictator was said to be so incensed by Albright's verbal attacks, he published a poem in Iraqi newspapers calling her an unrelenting serpent. Albright's response was one of quiet defiance. From that moment forward, she wore a brooch in the shape of a serpent at every meeting with the Iraqi leadership. And she began using her pins, as she called them, as a way of sending subtle messages without uttering a single word. Born Marie Jana Korbelova to a Czechoslovakian diplomat, Albright and her family fled the former Czechoslovakia after the Nazi invasion in 1939 and later found safe haven in the United States in 1948. She became a U.S. citizen, married media tycoon Joseph Patterson Albright, and had...
I want everybody to pay close attention to what was just said there for just a second. She married a media tycoon. Just keep that in mind. Keep that in the back of your head. She married a media tycoon and then she went into politics. And we all know those two tend to back each other. Mainstream media gives the talking points that DC wants it to give. That's why we don't hear the whole truth. That's why you have independent media. Truth usually comes out eventually, though. Going back in.
Had 3 children, all while working on her PhD and learning multiple languages. In 1982, Albright took a prestigious position.
I'm sorry, but the way that they say that, they make it seem like they said she had 3 children, all while earning her PhD. She was married to a media tycoon, a tycoon. When you marry into money, you can do that. I just want to point that out there. I'm sorry. Come back to me with the woman who had 3 kids and earned her PhD and she was not married into money. Come back to me with that.
As professor of international affairs at Georgetown University. But it was the shock of her husband asking for a divorce around that same time that changed the course of her life.
There was an identity crisis. As it turns out, I think those next 10 years were the ones that were the most influential.
She poured herself into her work, becoming foreign policy advisor to then presidential candidate Bill Clinton in 1992. Clinton, in turn, tapped her for the post of U.S. ambassador to the United Nations after he won the White House. As UN ambassador, Albright became known for her tenacity and determination to elevate U.S. interests at the UN through what she called aggressive multilateralism.
We must summon the spine to deter, the support to isolate, and the strength to defeat those who run roughshod over the rights of others.
She pushed hard for U.S. boots on the ground in the Balkans. The U.S. administration chose diplomacy instead, a decision that came at a costly human price.
So you heard that. She pushed hard for boots on the ground.
An even bigger regret, the failure of the U.S. to intervene to stop the Rwandan genocide in 1994.
I, Madeleine Albright.
Lessons learned from her past and the present, as Albright cemented her place in history, becoming the first ever female U.S. Secretary of State on January 23, 1997. When the Kosovo conflict erupted in 1998, Albright lobbied forcefully for NATO intervention. The NATO-led effort helped Kosovo gain independence from Serbian control, and the ICC indicted Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic for war crimes.
Never again will there be massacres and mass graves.
All right, I want to come out here for just a second because they mentioned Serbia. Madeleine Albright had a very negative view about Serbian people. In fact, I happen to have a video clip of that. You want to see it? Watch this. Let me show you who Madeleine Albright really was. This is the Twitter one. Give me just a second. Yep, this is the one. Okay. Let me show you who she really was. Let me pause this video for just a second. All right, let me share this image here. So this is Madeleine Albright. She's at a book signing in Prague. And there are some people from Serbia who are at the book signing. Listen to what she says. You'll have to listen closely. I'll play it twice so you can pick up on it. But listen to this.
Get out! Běžte pryč! Běžte pryč! Krvavá bába! Paní, běžte se mnou. Zavolejte policii někdo. Zavolejte policii.
Vy jste to je válečný zločinec. To je krvavá bába.
To je vaše dílo. Čekáme klidně. Vy jste váleční. Get out!
Jdete pryč. Nemáte tady co dělat. Volejte pryč. Nemáme se s vámi. Volá někdo do policii. Volejte. Policii. Já zavolám policii a já mu to
Čistý, to je vaše práce.
Jsme válečný zločinec.
Did you catch that? Let me go back just a little bit more. You have to listen closely. Right about here. Listen to this.
Čistý, to je vaše práce.
Jsme válečný zločinec.
She called them disgusting Serbs. That's what she just said to them. That lets you know right then and there exactly how Madeleine Albright felt about those people. She didn't just say, get out. She had to call them disgusting. How could you stoop that low? Whether you agree with the conflict that they had in their country or not, do you go so far to call them disgusting? That's how she felt. This is the woman that a lot of these politicians, including Miss Barbara Lee, Hillary Clinton, of course, are praising all over social media. Barbara Lee, who is African American. So when I tell you that the party controls what happens, the party controls what happens. That's not all of it, though. There's more from Madeleine Albright. She said a lot of things. Listen to this. Madeleine Albright dies at 84, once defended U.S. sanctions despite deaths of 500K plus Iraqi children. I want you to listen to this video. This is going to be disturbing. I'm just going to warn you what she says here. Greg Bruce said, what does their ethnicity have to do with anything? Racist hag. Exactly. What does that matter? That's who Madeleine Albright was. But listen to this video. Now, this is coming from Democracy Now! Hopefully there's no ad.
Secretary of State Madeleine Albright has died of cancer at the age of 84. Albright served as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations from 1993 to 1997, when President Bill Clinton nominated her to become the first female Secretary of State. Albright was a staunch supporter of U.S. power and defender of authoritarian leaders, including Egypt's Hosni.
Did you hear what she just said? Madeleine Albright was a defender of U.S. power. And I touched on this a little bit earlier on RBN about people believing that the United States has to be the most powerful country in the world, has to be the greatest country in the world. Madeleine Albright was one of those people. And that is a dangerous way of thinking. And the reason why it's a dangerous way of thinking is because it causes you to see other people, other countries as less than. Just like she did when she called the people from Serbia disgusting. That happens a lot in this country. People say USA is the best. We're the best. We're supposed to be the best. And it can cause you to look down on other people. If you notice in this video clip, there's Hillary Clinton to her left. And oh my, is that Cory Booker to her right? Cory Booker, the one who said he fights for criminal justice, talks about racial inequality. That Cory Booker is right by Madeleine Albright's side. And that is why no matter what they run on, no matter what they've done before they join the Democratic Party, it doesn't matter once they join the party because they conform to what the party wants. And at that time, what the party wanted was for Madeleine Albright to speak at Hillary's event. Racist, warmonger, Madeleine Albright. I'll go back into the video.
Mubarak in Indonesia's Suharto. She was a key architect of NATO's 78-day bombing of Serbia in 1999. In 1998, she joined President Clinton's foreign policy team in a live CNN event promoting the administration's threat to bomb Iraq into complying with the demands of UN weapons inspectors. An exchange between Albright and Columbus public school teacher John Strange was later billed by the media as the question heard around the world.
Look at all the people sitting next to her. There's John Kerry up at the podium. You have Colin Powell. Oh, what do you know? She's sitting next to another war criminal. What do you know? And next to Colin Powell is Hillary Clinton. I can't make this up.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
Listen to this.
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
Secretary of State Albright defended the Clinton administration's devastating sanctions against Iraq. In 1996, she was interviewed by Leslie Stahl on CBS's 60 Minutes.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And, you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Hold up. Now, there's a couple of problems with the clips I just showed you there. That's who Madeleine Albright is. I just want to remind everybody of that. Because the amount of praise that she's been getting this week is ridiculous. I'm going to go back and we're going to talk through it. Listen to what she says again. Now listen to the question that this gentleman is asking her, which he's spot on, by the way.
staunch supporter of U.S. power and defender of authoritarian leaders, including Egypt's Hosni Mubarak and Indonesia's Suharto. She was a key architect of NATO's 78-day bombing of Serbia in 1999. In 1998, she joined President Clinton's foreign policy team in a live CNN event promoting the administration's threat to bomb Iraq into complying with the demands of UN weapons inspectors. An exchange between Albright and Columbus public school teacher John Strange was later billed by the media as the question heard around the world.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
He brought it right back to the problem that the United States government is the one that was aiding those countries, giving them the weapons to do so that they could do the attacks that they did. The United States government was the reason for that. Interestingly enough, though, because I don't think you'd be able to ask that question today on mainstream media, I think they would cut you off. Or they would tell you, we got to go to commercial. The narrative is even more controlled now than it was back then. Don't think you'd be allowed to ask this question. Now, when they have town halls on television, especially CNN, people are already handpicked before the town hall happens. Some people don't realize that. They make it seem like they're calling on someone from the audience. They're not. Those people are already chosen beforehand. They already know they're going to be called on, and they already know what they're going to say. And for the commentators like Don Lemon, used to be Chris Cuomo, I'm sorry. Used to be Chris Cuomo. They already know what those audience members who are called on, they already know what their answer is going to be. I know this. My husband and I, we went to one of these town halls. They ask you to submit your questions ahead of time. Maybe you'll be chosen. The people are already chosen. So for those of you who don't know that, surprise, just wanted to reveal that to you. It's not legit. They pick certain people. I saw this through Bernie's 2020 campaign. Some of the people that they chose to ask questions during the town hall had worked for the Hillary Clinton campaign. They didn't put that under their description, under their name. They just put progressive activist. People working for the organization of change. They'll do things like that. So you don't know exactly who they're linked to. But he was right to ask her that question. And her response is terrible.
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
The crowd is booing her. See, CNN learned from the past. They realized we can't just let anybody come into this town hall. They're booing her. She goes on to mention weapons of mass destruction with Saddam Hussein. Do we ever find those, by the way? Remember that noise? Remember that? That's why we went over there. Because of weapons of mass destruction. What weapons? That was the narrative that they preached. This was a failure. Since she mentioned Saddam Hussein, I want to remind you that they took Saddam Hussein out, and that gave rise to ISIS. I'm not here to defend him by any means necessary, but this is what happens when we intervene in other countries and we try to take over their leadership, remove the leadership that they have, other people come in. Right, Lewis. Exactly. Still looking for those, right? Another group emerges and they are worse off than the person who was there before them. That's Madeleine Albright. I'm go back on to the worst part. The worst part.
Secretary of State Albright defended the Clinton administration's devastating sanctions against Iraq. In 1996, she was interviewed by Leslie Stahl on CBS's 60 Minutes.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
That's Madeleine Albright. The children were starving in Iraq, and Madeleine Albright said on 60 Minutes that she felt it was worth it. Now, why is this relative today? Because nothing has improved. Right now, you have kids in Afghanistan going through the same thing because of the sanctions put on them by the US government. Same thing. Didn't learn at all. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, what if this would have happened today? What if someone said that on 60 Minutes today? And then I had to remind myself, wouldn't happen because the reporters at 60 Minutes wouldn't be allowed to ask that question in the first place. That's how much the narrative has changed. You don't hear them ask those kinds of questions. They ask questions that are, for the most part, safe. Those questions are approved ahead of time. So when I show you that about Madeleine Albright, why in the hell are people praising her on social media? That's just a little I can show you in the time that I have. There is more. The same disgust that she had for people from Serbia, she had that same disgust and lack of empathy and compassion for the kids in Iraq. I wonder why. Some of the people that were praising Madeleine Albright, man, she really has some nerve. Representative Barbara Lee. So Barbara Lee tweeted this. I am devastated by the passing of Madeleine Albright. As a refugee, skilled diplomat, first female Secretary of State, and champion of democracy, she was a huge inspiration to myself and millions of others. Sending my deepest condolences to her family. May she rest in peace. That's Barbara Lee. I didn't like that tweet too much. So I responded, if Madeleine Albright was your inspiration, we need to talk. Barbara Lee said that. You see how the Democratic machine works? You don't think every Democrat representative wasn't encouraged to tweet out something positive about Madeleine Albright by the party? Really, Barbara Lee? Ashura said, devastated by the death of a racist. What? Remember what Cornel West said about black faces in high places? Barbara Lee, really? I'm going to go to some of the comments here. Greg Bruce says, right, because everyone in Iraq is Saddam Hussein. She was so full of shit, and so is anyone who praises her while pretending to be progressive. That's right. That's right. Monarch said, hey, hell, Sabby. During fourth primary debate 2020, MSNBC fucked up when they pinned Kamala Harris and Tulsi Gabbard together. LOL. Yes, I think we all remember how that turned out. Greg Bruce says, absolutely, like how every time Tulsi started to call out other candidates warmongering in the 2020 debates, just happened to be time for a commercial. Right? Snork says flags are at half mast in Iowa. Wow. Right? How quickly they forget. Madeleine Albright. To hear them sit around here and talk about her as if she was some saint. It's awful. And I can bet you, if Madeleine Albright was a Republican, you think they would have talked about her that way? You think the Democrat politicians would have praised her that way? No. It's disgusting. Yipper99 said, but Sabby, she broke glass ceilings and she is a woman and the first woman of Secretary of State. And that's what they want us to focus on. That part. So now you know, if you've never seen this before, now you know who Madeleine Albright really was. I don't know why they don't think that we can't go back to old video in this day and age. I'll go to that in just a second. Hitflix says, now I know why the flags were lowered at my job. She's garbage. Yeah, Hitflix. Yeah, I know. I'll go ahead and take that one, Eric. Thanks for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Lucifer is saying, hey, Maddie, welcome. Join your friends Scala, Bush, Senior, Reagan, McCain, J. Edgar Hoover, William Bradley. That's Malcolm X assassin. In the lava soup we got stewing. Lucifer, looking at his watch, says your friend Kissinger should be joining us here soon. She replies, what about my friend Justice Thomas? Lucifer says, maybe, but I got word he has to go upstairs first from what I understand. Thank you for this tip as well. Thurgood wants to have a word with him. Once you start seeing pieces of his soul start falling from the sky into this soup, then you know he has arrived. So come on, jump in or be pushed. Wow. Lady Alex M said, this is the same as when they praise war crime mongers, Powell, Rumsford, and McCain. Exactly. 100%. I'm going to go into my second story. Thank you for the tip, the super chat. Sorry, I get confused sometimes. The super chat on YouTube, Cool Blue. The Dems, more than the GOP, mourned John McCain. They did, right? GOP was not trying to hear that noise because John McCain came back to DC to vote against Trump when Trump was trying to change Obamacare. He came back, flew back into DC just to do that and then went back home. So yeah, I don't think they were feeling him too much. Shout out to Margot Schultz, who just became a Sabby member. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, he wasn't on their fun list anymore. Go ahead and switch over the patrons. All right. So this story is about Joe Biden's approval rating. Now, for those who do not know or may not remember, Joe Biden actually got a slight bump up in the polls after the State of the Union address. Some people say it's because of the message that he delivered during the address. I was actually turned off by that message, especially when he started bragging about funding the police more. He definitely lost some black folk. I can tell you that one. But I thought it was more so about the fact that he was talking about war. And I felt like that's actually what increased his numbers. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was short-lived. And his numbers have decreased again. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this. Boop, boop, boop. U.S. President Joe Biden's public approval rating fell to a new low of 40% this week, a clear warning sign for his Democratic Party as it seeks to retain control of Congress in November 8th election. According to is it Reuters? Eric, you tell me how to say this the right way. I don't know if it's Reuters or Reuters, whatever. Ipsos opinion poll. The national poll conducted on March 21st and 22nd found that 54% of Americans disapprove of his job performance as the country struggles with high inflation and Russia's invasion of Ukraine has pushed geopolitical concerns to the fore. Let me go down here. So 54%, you guys, this is more than half of Americans disapprove of his job performance. It says Biden's approval rating is down 3 percentage points from the prior week, mirrors that which his Republican predecessor, Donald Trump, received at this point in his presidency, as both stood at 40% in mid-March in their second year in office. Trump's approval rating sank as low as 33% in December 2017. Poll respondents cited the economy as their top concern, followed by war and foreign conflicts. Who would have known? Who would have guessed? There's been a lot of liberal pundits on TV telling you that the reason why Joe Biden's number is decreasing because the Democrats decided to go with defund the police, which is really interesting because according to Nancy Pelosi, she has told you multiple times, other members of the Democratic Party have told you multiple times that they are not for defund the police. Joe Biden told you he's not for defunding the police. The only person in Congress or in DC that appears to be for defunding the police is Cori Bush, and she stands alone. So Joe Biden told you during the State of the Union address that he wants to give the police more money. He's going to fund the police. Fund the police is what he said. His poll number still went down. So it was never about the defunding the police message. And I've been saying this all along. It is the economy. American people are struggling. American people are just trying to survive, trying to get by. And we are now, supposedly, according to Joe Biden, headed into a food shortage. I'm going to get into that in just a second. Did he really think that he could fool us? Did he really think that he could make us believe that the economy is as good as he says it is? When I see all of these people without jobs, when I see that the homeless population has increased, and not just in my state in Massachusetts, I was talking to my dad the other day. My dad told me even in South Carolina, the homeless rate has increased. He said it's ridiculous now. If you go downtown where I went to college, University of South Carolina, he said if you go down there now, it's ridiculous how many homeless people are around the university now. But Joe Biden sat up there and tried to convince people, and CNN tried to tell you, and MSNBC tried to tell you it was all because of defund the police because they ran with that message. They've made it very clear they're not running with that message. And the poll numbers just told you the number one concern is the economy. I didn't see anything listed there about police. These are the lies that they tell you so they can convince you that the Democratic Party is moving further to the left. It's not moving further to the left. They haven't given us shit. All they've done is help corporations and help their own damn pockets. Now I'm going to show you a video clip that shows you a little bit more in depth of what those numbers actually look like. Let me pull that up for you. Nope, that's not the one. Sorry, I have too many tabs open. Don't be like me, guys. Don't be like me. Don't have too many tabs open. All right, here we go. Now I want to give a shout out to Case Study QB for this clip because you're about to see these demographics. Let me go ahead and zoom in here. Shout out to Case Study QB discussing President Biden like in support of among key demographics in latest polls. So listen to this.
Polls show support for President Biden is not as high as 4 years ago among pretty key demographics. He's down 15 points, we'll show you here, among black voters with 71% support, down 11 points among women, 7 among Hispanics. He's even down among young people, right? You'd imagine a wartime bump in his approval rating. He didn't get it. In fact, the latest polls show his approval ratings at 40%. That's like an all-time low for some of them. So we're 1 month into this invasion, and look at this, 53% of voters say they are not confident in Joe Biden's handling of the crisis and his judgment of it.
If you're not a socialist by the age of 25, you've got no heart. If you're still a socialist after you're 25, you've got no head. That's why youngsters, I believe, are beginning to turn towards the Republican Party.
Polls show support for President Biden is not as high as 4 years ago among pretty key demographics. He's down 15 points, we'll show you here, among black voters with 7.
I want to pause here and I want you to pay close attention to these numbers. So here we go. Black voters in 2018, he was at 84%. He's now down to 71% with black voters. With women, he was at 53%. He is now down to 42%. Under the age of 45, he was at 49%, although I even questioned that one. He was at 49% and he's now down to 41%. With Hispanic voters, he was at 59. He's now down to 52. The key metric I want you to pay close attention to is the black voters. Because Democrats can't win without the black vote. So this actually makes me smile because it makes me realize, yes, more African Americans are waking up to the fact that the Democratic Party is not going to help you either. That both parties serve corporate interest. Joe Biden doesn't want to help stop crime in black communities. You know how I know that? His answer is to bring in more cops. Most crime is connected to poverty. So if he really wanted to improve conditions in black communities, he would be trying to fix the poverty issue. You fix the poverty issue, you fix the crime issue. But he doesn't want to do that. Got to keep the poorest poor. He knows that. And he knows in some of these suburban communities, he knows damn well that they don't want a whole influx of black people coming in. Let's be real. So what do? The United States government will continue to give you just enough to get by. Yes, go ahead. We'll let you get on welfare. We'll give you food stamps. It'll be enough for them to get by, but it'll keep them exactly where they are. Very few get out because poverty is a cycle and it is difficult to get out of poverty. If you don't have some type of help, it is difficult. Not everyone is LeBron James. Not everyone is Oprah Winfrey. Most people are not. And those people are outliers. And I want to say this really quick and I get back to the story. I think the message that comes from people like Oprah and Tyler Perry with this "I did it so you can do it too" story, I think that is very dangerous because the reality is, they know damn well, the majority of people will not have that happen for them. They're not willing to tell you some of the things they may have done in the background to get to where they are. Oprah Winfrey's not going to tell you some of the things that she did to some of the other black reporters to get to where she was in Chicago to get her that show. Oh, yes. Everyone's misbeloved Oprah Winfrey. Ask people in Baltimore that were around 70s. Ask them about Oprah Winfrey. So those numbers are significant. 84% to 71%. I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat. Thanks for the super chat, Snork Y2K. Gee, my top concern is someone with dementia making decisions for all of us. Also, the selection of Harris as VP should be an impeachable offense. Oof. Yeah, Kamala doesn't know what she was doing. But I told people, I said, she's not right for that position. Cool Blue, thanks for the super chat. Loyal D's, media and voters think they can fool all. 100%. G Fresh P, thanks for the comment. Sabs, I met your dad T in the gym on 4th. You met my dad at the gym? Oh, cool. Awesome. I know my dad's like, he's a gym person. I met your dad T at the gym on Fort Jackson. Had to subscribe. I do local radio and have a podcast. Can you? Oh, that's right. You guys can't put links in the chat. Can you put the name of the radio station and the podcast in the chat if you get a chance, or send me an email? My email link is underneath the description part of all my videos. That's awesome. I'm glad you got to meet my dad. Golden Silence says, I have hated Jim Crow Joe. No one is happy paying $6 a gallon while inflation is costing everything $2 more. I know, Golden Silence. I hear you. Thanks for the super chat, Cool Blue. D's don't want to win. Estimated 90% of black voters. Barack Obama won in 2008 with 53% nationally. Blacks accounted for about 13% of that 53%. Interesting. Valerie, what about Oprah in the 70s? Oprah used to work for a radio station in Baltimore called, I think it was V103. I have to check with my dad. My dad knows the story. He's probably told me about a lot of times. I just don't remember all the details. But she used to work with this radio station in V103. And then I think she did local TV there also in Baltimore. Yeah. And she went over to Chicago. They told her in order to do that show that she had to change her hair. Actually, I think that started with the news station first. When she went to Chicago, they told her she couldn't, because she had an afro. They told her she couldn't do that. So she had to change her hair. I would have just kept my hair the way it was and like, oh, well, you just lose. But that shows you Oprah was willing to conform. Rick says, that's why they call it the American dream. You have to be asleep to believe it. George Carlin. Right? Catterell says, fuck Oprah. Oh, man. Aziz said, Oprah is one evil bitch. Ask what she did to Dave Chappelle. Listen, there's a lot of stuff about Oprah, right? I'm not going to get into all of it tonight because I am looking at the time and I know I need to get into that other story and get ready for Callin as well. Thanks for the comments on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. Oh, maybe not. Oh, there we go. Thanks for the tip on Rockfin, Brian. The liberals now love anyone who doesn't like Trump, even John Bolton. Wow. Thanks for the tip, Roger. Sabby, thanks for the shout out to the New York Health Act earlier this week about how it would cover people who live in other states but work here. The here, as you said, is not just NYC, but anywhere in New York State you may work. New York State touches Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. All of you in those states, you and your family would be eligible if you work here. Imagine that it was a WC. Oh, imagine it was a worker co-op instead of Schultz who bought the coffee. Oh, yeah. That's a good one. Thanks for this tip as well from George Hallwell. Corey's acting skills increased since Rosario. Yeah, Rosario Dawson. Yeah, we're talking about Cory Booker. I was joking around earlier. Thanks for this tip as well. Talking about economy is not a true reflection on how working people are doing because they're looking at purchasing power. That power only exists because of credit cards, which you apply for because income is below cost of living. How we should measure how good working people are doing is whether income inequality divide is widening or narrowing. Thank you so much for that on Rockfin. Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm going to go into my third story here, which is about the food shortage. So let me go ahead and grab that, because this is all connected. And this is what I was telling you about the economy. Regardless if Joe Biden comes on TV and tells you that the unemployment numbers are so great, and doesn't tell you that the reason why the unemployment numbers are so low is because he kicked people off of unemployment in September. I don't know if I've said that multiple times, but every time and then I get new people that join the show. But that's important for people to know. He's making it seem like they're low because everyone's getting all these jobs. They're not getting all these jobs. In fact, almost every place I go to here in Massachusetts, he has a sign on the door that says now hiring or need help now. They're not getting those jobs. They're not taking those jobs because they don't pay a living wage, because they don't give them any kind of benefits, because you still have people in this country in certain states where the minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. That's why they're not taking those jobs. So regardless if Joe Biden continues to come on TV and tell people, oh, yes, the unemployment numbers are great, and lies to the American people, I think the time has finally come that people are looking at their own material conditions and they are realizing that it is not working. And if it hadn't been for a pandemic, I don't think a lot of people would have woken up yet, because people kept believing these lies. And you hear those lies and you think to yourself, well, damn, they say the economy's great. It must just be me. I must be the one that's doing something wrong. Maybe I don't have a good job. Maybe I should have worked harder. Maybe I'm not working enough hours a week, even though I'm working 60 hours a week. Maybe I don't know how to budget. Maybe I don't know how to save. Those are the things that they will tell you. Maybe I didn't pull myself up by my own bootstraps. But for the first time in my lifetime, I feel like more American people are finally looking at their own material conditions and realizing that the media and the president, they are lying to you. They're all corporate, and it is so corrupt. It's different when you're living through it. It's different when you see how much you have to pay for gas, when you see money just flowing out of your wallet and you have to continue to fill up your gas tank because the gas prices are so damn high. It's different when you walk into the grocery store, and someone mentioned this earlier. Now you realize you got to pay $4 for a gallon of milk. People are starting to see from their own material conditions, and that is what I encourage all of you to do. Pay close attention to what's going on in your life, in your neighborhood, and shush the noise from mainstream media. A lot of those people on CNN and MSNBC and Fox News, a lot of those people are rich. What? Just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. So Joe Biden brought up the fact that we may be headed for a food shortage. Listen to this.
With regard to food shortage, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well. And because both Russia and Ukraine have been the breadbasket of Europe in terms of wheat, for example, just to give you one example. But we had a long discussion in the G7 with both the United States, which has a significant, the third largest producer of wheat in the world, as well as Canada, which is also a major, major producer. And we both talked about how we could increase and disseminate more rapidly food shortages. In addition to that, we talked about urging all the European countries and everyone else to end trade restrictions on sending limitations on sending food abroad. And so we are in the process of working out with our European friends what it would take to help alleviate the concerns relative to food shortages.
Do you think that Russia needs to be removed from the G20?
On the latter point, my answer is yes. It depends on the G20.
First of all, I don't even know if Joe Biden even knows where he's at right now. Second thing I want to bring up, which I've been trying to like give people a heads up about, for the people who were cheering about the sanctions, I told you sanctions, this would all come back. For the people who were cheering about the sanctions on Russia, I told you should never be for economic warfare, regardless if it's our country or another country. You should never approve of that. And anyone who's telling you that you should be okay with that, dismiss those talking points right now. The people in those countries will struggle. The people in those countries will suffer. Just like I showed you what happened to the kids in Iraq, what's happening right now to the children in Afghanistan. And now it is going to come back on us. And this is what I was trying to warn people. Putting those sanctions on Russia was not just going to affect Russia. It was going to affect us too. This is not a one-off. This is not a one country thing. Someone mentioned earlier in the chat, then why the hell is he doing the sanctions, right? Trust. This is more about power than anything. I told you guys, the United States government usually does not intervene unless there's some type of resources at play. I told you about the pipeline, the Nord 2 pipeline. So this idea that we're just really care about the people in Ukraine and we're trying to help the Ukrainian people is bullshit. This is what the United States government does. Now I'm seeing on the news that the United States government said we can bring in over 100,000 refugees from Ukraine. Really? If we have a food shortage, so we can bring in refugees from Ukraine, but we couldn't bring in refugees from Syria? What? What about the kids in Syria? Remember that? They said, no, they can't come here. No. Remember the refugees from Haiti? They met them at the border. Said, go back. No, can't bring them in. What about the refugees in Yemen? Oh, nope, not supposed to talk about that. Can't bring them in. What about the people in Somalia that the United States government is destroying? Can't bring them. It seems like to me, you can only bring in a certain type of people. In that sense, Joe Biden is no different from Trump. Because Trump said that same thing. You can't bring over. We want the good immigrants. We want the good educated ones, like from Norway. Remember he said that? Seems like to me, when it's immigrants of color, they don't want them to come here. I tried to warn people about this. This is why I keep telling people we need to learn how to grow our own food. If you don't know how to do this, this is not something we should be sitting on. In fact, we should have started doing this back when the pandemic first started, because that was a big reality check for us, right? Going into the grocery store and seeing half the food gone, all the toilet paper was gone. We should be building community with each other and feeding each other, because people who are rich, when the food prices increase again, they will not be affected. Joe Biden is not going to be affected. They will make sure he still has food to eat. The celebrities that a lot of people are out here worshiping and praising, I'm going to let you know right now, they will be okay. Let's see if those same people are willing to donate to the American people the same way they were willing to donate money to people in Ukraine. I bet not many. This is a problem. And now there's so many people saying, oh no, we may not have enough food. What are we going to do? I said, I hate to tell you so, but I've been saying this. And over at Revolutionary Blackout Network, we've been saying this. RJ had someone on last year, months ago, that did a whole stream on how to grow your own food. I will have someone on next week to talk about that. Thank you for the super chat, CryoSynth42. Joe Biden admitted he will sacrifice all of us for his last play. There's another term for last play. I just don't want to get on more lists. I hear you. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the super chat, Oz LaFauve. Hi, Sabby. What time is your guest Anna Kasparian coming on to discuss Madeline finally dead? Oh, man. Keep up the awesome work, Sabrina. Love you. Thanks, Oz. Oz is awesome, you guys. I think I got everyone else. Okay. So this is a problem. Thank you so much for asking that question, Liz. If you live in an apartment, how can you grow your own food? So there's a guy named Logan. He's on the Populist Voice Network. He actually did a stream during our General Strike Summit where he showed you videos of how he actually does that. He lives in an apartment in New York City. He has a garden. And I need to get him to come on too, so he can tell you guys how to do that as well. And I have to find that video for you. But Logan showed us that even though he lives in an apartment, he can still grow his own food. And he shows people like how you can still do it. So yes, Logan would need to come on too. Thank you so much for that. Because not everybody lives on a farm. Not everybody has access to land. That's important. I'll take those comments, Eric. Thank you. I think I read those. I thought I did. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Thank you for the tip, Roger. Talking about the economy is not a true reflection on how working people are doing because they're looking at purchasing power. That power only exists because of credit cards. Yeah, I read that already. Lady Alex M, we are going to be forced to pull our resources when it gets to the point of no return. Yeah, I have those. All right, Eric, we should start to transition into the call-in segment. But before we do that, I do want to let everybody know what we're talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and share. Uh-oh. I don't know what happened. Oh, I disconnected. I'll connect again. Tonight's call-in segment. Again, a lot of this is connected to the economy here, bud. Okay, you guys. But this brought me to a different question here, and it made me start to think, especially as someone who went to the university system. So, is college really worth it? So this is the story that we're starting with here, and we're going to transition into call-in. I'll be simulcasting so you can see me still. I'll still be here on YouTube, but I will also be on the call-in app as well. That'll open up at 9:15 p.m. Is college still worth it? There's one thing I want to point out here in this article. Here we go. 81% of college-bound juniors and seniors still see college as a worthwhile investment. Only 42% of families feel confident about covering the cost, according to a report by Sallie Mae. Now, that's interesting. That's coming from Sallie Mae, who is a student loan company, a predatory student loan company. So just keep that in mind. As a result, a growing number are opting out entirely. The number of undergraduates enrolled in college is now down 5.1% compared to 2 years ago, according to a separate report by the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center. A loss of nearly 1 million students. And that brings up the question that I have for tonight's segment. In 2022, is college still worth it? I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break. The call-in room will open up at 9:15 p.m., you guys. So, Eric, if you have the link, actually, I have the link. I don't know what I'm doing. The link for the call-in room, it's pinned at the top of the chat, you guys. So if you just go ahead and click on that link, that'll let you in once I open the room. And then I'll also put it here as well. I really want to hear your opinions about this. I want to hear from people who have been to college and people who have not been to college. I want to hear from both of you. Maybe you didn't go to college, but your kids went to college, and maybe you feel some kind of way about that. Steve, you said you had a super chat. I don't. Oh, I see it. Thanks for the super chat, Steve. Sabby Hunter was funneling money into Ukrainian biolabs. Check out Garland Nixon's latest live stream just a few minutes ago. Oh, I'll have to check that out. Thank you for letting me know. That must have just broke. Thanks, Steve. Thank you for that. Thanks for the tip on Rockfin, Jim Garrison. Another great show, Sabby. Thank you so much. All right, I do have to take a quick 4-minute break, and I'll be right back. So, Eric, if you want to go ahead and hop on to read some of the comments, and I'll be right back.
All right. How's everybody doing? Let's see. Oh, hey, let me do this. Let's do that. All right. So, yeah, what were people's experiences with college? That's certainly a place we can start here until Sabby gets back. From Trish, I'm in college and I wonder if it's worth it. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on how much you paid, right? I mean, I went to college a little while back, and it was dang cheap then. So it was worth it for me. Doing this stuff is hard. I don't know how Sabby or anybody does it, especially like if someone's on their own. But hey, all. Hi, Comrade Kim. Hi, Steve. Yeah, I mean, years ago, like I went to like the local state college, and I mean, this was in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, and they called it back then it was Fitchburg State College, and it had been around for like decades. It used to be like the local teachers' college. And it was nothing fancy, but I mean, I got an engineering degree out of it and went from there. You look at it today, and like they've changed it to Fitchburg State University, and of course all the costs have gone through the roof. But they have some really nice buildings now. It's like, boy. And it's like that's where the money's going. So I mean, part of this is certainly all the colleges, basically education K through 16 just needs to be free. All the public schools, but there's also going to be a part of this of lowering the costs, because part of what's happened is that it's become this cycle where the students can get higher and higher student loans, and then the colleges see they can charge more, and then the colleges get fancier and fancier buildings, and then of course their tuitions and their fees go up. The other big trick you saw was lobbing all kinds of fees on. So they'll be like, oh, the tuition's still cheap, and like the fees can add up to more than the tuition. I see Trish T going to public college. Hopefully that's cheaper. I mean, it's got to be cheaper than the big ones. Hopefully that's affordable, shall we say. And Lucky's here with us. Hey, Lucky, college does not guarantee a job anymore. Well, it kind of, yeah, I mean, that's certainly true. And, depending on the degree. And it's it cuts both ways. There's this, you can certainly get your degree and come out into an economy and just find there's not a job for you like Sabby did. There's the way that it cuts the other way too, in that there are all these jobs where if you don't have the degree, if you don't have the piece of paper, then you're not getting the job. And that's just like the first qualification. That's certainly how it is in the engineering field, kind of where I'm at. I mean, I went to school for software engineering and got that degree and just kind of slid right into it. And what I'll say to people is if you like coding, if you like computers, then it's a good gig to get into. I mean, if you can make it work, it's well compensated. But I mean, if that's not your thing, then it's not necessarily a great path and a great gig to get into. So it kind of depends. That's the thing. Here from Max Fiend. I went to an art college. When we graduated, the diplomas were fake because they almost lost their accreditation that year, but didn't say anything. Over $100K for a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and it'd be more than double now. Yep. I mean, it's a thing where it used to be true. I mean, I feel like there was a day, at least for kind of the middle class, where it used to be true that you would get your degree and you do well, and it was a good path. And now it kind of depends.
All right, I opened up the room.
Oh, the room. Oh, can you invite Sabby Sabs Audio to be a speaker?
Yep.
We'll see if the tech works for us today.
Someone mentioned in the chat, do they have to be a member to call in? No, you just have to click on the link, which is right here. And it's also pinned at the top of the live chat. You just click on that. And then you have to have the app if you actually want to call. If you just want to listen, you can do it on the computer by listening, but you'll still hear me on YouTube too. But if you have the app, all you have to do is click on that link and then select to be a caller. So yeah, that's how that works.
Also, it'll probably work if you're in Callin and you search Sabby Sabs. It'll probably come up if the app is working well.
Yeah.
Now, did you do the invite thing?
Yeah, I'll do it again.
Probably this thing. Well, I know how. Yeah, back to the home.
Okay, I just did it again. Cool.
Okay, in the room. Let's see. Oh, in the room. Can you go on the? Are you on the? You must be on the app. Do it from the app. Invite
yeah, I
to
did.
Speak. Sabby Sabs. Invite to speak. Why is it coming up here?
Sabby Sabs Audio invite. Yeah.
Okay.
It shows you're online.
Yeah, I'm in the room.
Let me see if you're okay. Let me click on you from here.
Yeah,
invite.
do it from there.
Okay, now it
there
says.
There we go. Now we're getting somewhere.
Cool.
That one. Add to our stream.
Hit that like button, guys.
All right, let's try one.
All right, all right. All right, Eric, I just need you to mute for just a second on YouTube at least. All right. Give me a thumbs up on Callin if you can hear me. All right, I see thumbs up. All right, welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast on Callin. Tonight, we are talking about college. Is college still worth it? The cost of living continues to increase. College grads are struggling with student loan debt. One has to ask, is college still worth it? So, 2022, I see we got a lot of people lined up to talk. I'm going to go ahead and get started with Eric. All right, Eric, you are now on the mic.
Hey, Sabby, thank you for taking my call. You had a lot of good shows. The show that you had today, and then the one right before it, I think an hour and a half ago before too, with Cory Booker was really, really good. So, and I want you to put that clip when you kind of went on fire with that guy talking about Booker. But your question here about college, it's all tied into everything that we do. Having the ability to go to college in the past, let's say the past 20 to 30 years, definitely provided a path to somewhat of success, depending on the level of the type of college degree that you got and what school you went to, up to a point. Once you became part of the workforce and you kind of made your way through there, you would have had other opportunities. But the set off was getting the college degree and maybe getting an internship and creating a path through that access through the school. Today, I think it's a little bit different because you could actually learn how to code. You could learn how to get certifications. Like if you wanted to become a network engineer, which I have friends that do this, and they make hundreds of thousands of dollars, in excess of that, some of them. But they put in a lot of work to do this. It wasn't like overnight to get there. Some of them have actually got what are called certifications, and they might have gone to like a junior college, got the certifications, got some entry-level experience, and did not go to a four-year college, and now are making a lot of money in Silicon Valley.
Yep.
Now, conversely, even 20, 30 years ago, had you gone in what we used to call in those days the Mickey Mouse, and I hate to say this,
Oh, Eric, I think you're breaking up a little bit.
was said that way, a Mickey Mouse major, a major in the liberal arts. Even back then, you could have gotten a job, but it would not have been a high-paying job, if you will. Okay, I'm sorry. Hear me now?
Yeah, I think you're breaking up just a little bit, but I heard you say the part about even with liberal.
Oh my God, I lost it. Is this better? Can you? Yeah, can you hear me a little better now?
Yeah.
So what I was saying was even with the type of degrees that you get, if you got a liberal arts degree, you're not going to make as much money. Historically, they don't pay as well. In today's world, I would, the way that I coach people that come to me for not just necessarily coaching, but just guidance. What I try to tell them in today's world is that they need to get a degree, whatever degree they get, they need to get some slant into it or something as a part of it that deals with MIS, like computer, somewhat an avenue where you can actually go into a job and say, I did this much in computers. I did this. I studied these programs, because everything is gearing towards that path. And I think Eric, your producer, was talking about being a coder, and the coder, the guys that actually and women that know how to program, they are actually making the most money, and they can demand a ton of money coming out of school. And that's just the way that things are sort of working out, because everything is being programmed. Literally everything that we do involves some sort of coding. And what I tell people is that, you should, if you have the means to do that, if you have the knack for doing that, you should pursue that. College may not be the only way of doing it, because I've got several friends who did not go the 4-year route, and over a number of years have made their path into now being successful and actually making, money. But it took them years to get there. So the college opening the doors, it definitely does it faster than if you don't go to college. And then there's other things that are, within the colleges that are also detrimental to, say, people like me that are, I come from what I consider to be a challenging economic background. It's very difficult to get into school because you're trying to just live. You're trying to just pay your bills. Your parents, you may not come from a 2-parent household like I didn't. And so there's so many challenges. And so even today, I recently went back to my college that I went to, which was a really, really good school here in California, that it hasn't changed, meaning that the percentage of people that are going there is still the same. The minority percentage is still the same. So even after 20 plus years, the schools, to some degree, they still look the same, which to me means that not much has changed in terms of the barriers that are there to allow people like myself, and probably many of your listeners, to get into school, if that makes sense.
That's a good point. I do want to start off by saying, just to let people know this who may not be aware, I have been on both sides of the higher education system. Obviously, I was an undergrad, I was a grad student, but I've also been on the administration side. And I just want to mention that for people who are new and tuning in and may not realize that about me. So I wanted to tell you that so people understand like why I have the talking points that I have, being a student and being on the administration side. And the biggest concerns that I have with the university system today is that it has turned into more of a money system. It's just all about the money based on what I've seen. And I've been an academic advisor. I've also been on the finance side. And I have seen students graduating from college, particularly in the past 5 years. They are graduating from these universities with loads of student loan debt. And they're getting salary offers, but the salary offers are like $45,000 a year, $50,000 a year, which in the Boston area in Massachusetts, that's not much. And so my biggest concern is I don't think these kids are going to be able to pay off these student loans. If you're graduating from a school like Boston University, the tuition is like $70,000 a year, and you didn't get hardly any scholarships. You're mainly relied on financial aid, student loans. How are you going to pay those loans off? And that's what I'm really concerned about is the money. I've seen these universities take in a lot of money and use it in the wrong places. They'll spend it on presidential suites. They'll spend it on a gold elevator door. They tend to have a lot of money to put into athletics, especially if you went to a sports school. I went to the University of South Carolina. It's a sports school. They tend to have all this money to put into the athletics. But when it comes to the actual academic environment, the classrooms are falling apart. There's some classrooms that have mold in the classrooms. There's leaky ceilings. The dorms are a mess. I saw this recently with Howard University. The kids have mold in the dorms, and the university is bringing in a lot of money and they're not using it in the right way. And these kids are graduating with a lot of debt. And I think that's my biggest concern is that at the end of the day, is it worth it if you get the degree, you get a job, but you're not making enough in that job to pay off the student loans? Like that's where I'm really concerned. And I saw a lot of my students just being held back, like because of it.
So I agree with you, Sabby. You're 100% right. Over the last 20 to 30 years. But you got to remember the schools, universities are no more different, a reflection of the overall society of what's going on as far as money making and just gearing towards that. What the schools do is they do make you more of a critical thinker in a sense, but they also can sway you to become part of the status quo, just like Cory Booker, going to Stanford, then going to Oxford. I mean, those are probably as high as you could go in terms of a degree that you could get from some of the best schools. And yet, see what you get is somebody like Cory Booker. Mm-hmm. So it's a very challenging thing to how do we fix, what you're describing. I think one of the things that we have to do is emphasize and prioritize schools becoming free, like Eric, your producer, was saying, up to the 16th grade, which is the 4th year of college, and making healthcare the two emphasis that we emphasize our government to focus on. Those two things alone, if we focused on them, we can make them better, much better than focusing on anything else that we do. Those two things alone would change the dynamics of the whole country and society. And it would take, a lot of work to do so. But it's very simple. I remember my teachers asking me where would I put my money. I think one of my best teachers that I had, this guy named Mr. Williams, in my junior middle school when I was going to school in San Francisco in the Bay Area. And I remember as a kid saying, if we just put all our money into schools, and in that day I said the hospitals, I didn't know the word healthcare, but I knew that just as a little kid, I could tell, like, you know what, if we put all the money into schools and into medicine, we're going to be better off. Because in those days, my mom was struggling as a single parent, and I could see how challenging it was, just to put food on the table and just not having a father around. So those two things alone would change everything. But we don't do that as a society. Even the schools are focused on just bringing in more money and not focusing on the individuals, the people that are actually trying to, make it to really productive citizens. It's all going back to capitalism, right?
Yeah.
It's all going back to that. And I had some breakthrough teachers that actually pointed things out to me when I was in school. Some of my history teachers talking about, false flags, the things that the empire, that our country has done. And those things do change how you look at things. So that's why I say, in my eyes, school could be a really good avenue to open up your eyes, to look at how things really are and make you think differently. But I see your side too. It's a gig. Right now, people are making money off of it. And not everybody has the means once they get out to actually pay off those loans. For me, 25 years ago when I graduated, the only way I could go to school was I got loans and I got grants. And there was programs in those days that I was actually almost paying, I want to say about 2/3 to a half of my school was almost free to scholarships and grants. And the rest was loans. And I think it must have taken me like 8 years to pay off the loans, but it was minimal money relative to today's dollar. So it was pretty good deal back then. But certainly today it's not, and it's not fair. So, this is more of everything you've been saying with RBN, focusing on people and not money. So
I agree.
You,
well said, Eric. Thank you so much for calling. I'm going to go ahead to the next caller, which is Kusha. And I do want to say something really quickly before I bring Kusha in. Eric brought up something about free college. And I do believe that public universities in this country should be free. The biggest problem I think we're going to run into with that is the military-industrial complex, because one of the benefits that the military offers is free college. So I think that's part of the reason why they don't want to make these public universities free in the United States, because that's one of the recruiting benefits that the military-industrial complex would have to remove. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Kusha. All right, Kusha, you are on the mic.
Good evening, Sabby. Thank you so much for bringing me on the mic. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you once again.
Greetings. Thanks so much for joining.
Definitely. I think you raise a very important topic about education, specifically about college. I think that on the one hand, it's crucial to consider the marketability of one's college education, especially given the current capitalist economy of the United States, how brutal it can be if you don't have your bearings. By that I mean if you're not able to sustain yourself either through your background educationally, or through your family, or through your connections. I think always education is valuable. I think that one thing, though, is people should be students always. That's one of the defining principles of the School of Business at the University of California, Berkeley, which I help teach classes through. And I think that the educational experience in the United States, undergraduate, graduate, and so on, what it most fundamentally does, given the nature of neoliberal capitalism, is it provides a sense of ethos. And ethos, by that I mean a mode of persuasion, which Aristotle talks about, I think, in his book Rhetoric. And of course, there are senses of pathos and logos, pathos being convincing people through your sense of emotions, logos being through your sense of logic and reason, and ethos being your credibility and authority. And that's, of course, foremost for so many people who just want to make a dollar, who just want to progress up the perceived ladder socially and financially and so on and so forth. And I think that there is a benefit through the undergraduate experience if one makes use of it through the network that can be established. Not that the internet, of course, and through other milieu, one cannot establish that, but there's a social capital through having the mutual background of an educational experience with other people. It helps your naming, it helps your name, your resume, your authority, your credibility, your brand. At the same time, the concern that you have for student debt is a very serious one. And it's even one I raised to one of my former professors at Berkeley. His wife is currently the Secretary of Energy for Joe Biden. Her name is Jen Granholm. She also used to be the governor of Michigan. I raised it to him very clearly on one of his blog posts that he shares to his former alumni. And in fact, what you did just in this episode by mentioning the war machine and how it detracts from the educational experience, I raised the same thing to him. I told him in this blog post response that I gave him that the war budget for Biden for 2022 or what have you is like $768 billion, and it's only grown since the Trump administration. And on the other hand, we have over 44.7 million people drowning in $1.86 trillion of student loan debt. And, clearly the Lyndon Baines Johnson administration signed in the Higher Education Act of 1965, giving the Secretary of Education the power to enforce, pay, compromise, waive, or release any right, title, claim, lien, or demand, however acquired. And there's no political will to do so from the Biden administration. And obviously, he ignores the left. He obviously sees that, justifiably in his case, that whether he listens or not, he can do whatever he wants. And so I think that education, of course, if you look back, to the days of Aristotle even, it's something that people who have had the means and the resources always have valued. Like Alexander the Great, one of the most influential military leaders who spread through bloodshed and war and genocide in like Thebes, Egypt, and Tyre, Lebanon. But he did spread a religious tolerance and economic tolerance for trade through the learnings of Aristotle. And his dad seeked out Aristotle. He wanted like a great tutor. So I think there is always a value to an education, especially if one's pursuing what they're most interested in, what they most have a passion for, what they most want to set their mind and their hearts to. So I would never discourage anyone from pursuing whatever intellectual pursuit, or whatever intellectual aspiration that they have, even knowing that there is an educational, trade-off of being indebted. I think that what we have to do as a whole is be willing to stand up for one another by putting political pressure on those who have the levers of power under their control to make it such that the case is these people took on this burden because you promised them a better life as a result of it, and they want to better their minds and their spirit and their morale. I think that's how I see this matter. Of course, I realize that the drain from the student loan debt is unbearable for so many people, and the promises that are not kept are always painful for those who believe that things might change. So I didn't believe much of what Biden said at all.
Thank you so much for that, Kusha. I'm going to go ahead to the next caller.
Sure. Thank you very much.
All right. So the next caller is Jewel. Is it like Jewel the singer? We shall see. All right, Jewel, you are the next caller. You are on the mic.
Hi, Sabby. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, it's Jewel. I like that nickname. My full name's Juliet, so I comment a lot on your live streams and stuff. But yeah, my name's Jewel. I am 30,000 negative in the hole because of student debt. I would say college is only worthwhile if you wanted to play the game. If you want to do the networking, that is probably the best move there. But if you're trying to like learn something or to like not be a conformist, more than likely you're not gonna really get what you want or what you need. Sorry, I'm excited, so I'm just
Oh, well, welcome. I want to comment on that really quick. What you were just saying about getting like what you really need. And that's another thing that concerns me about higher education today. I don't feel that we are using our time wisely in the traditional 4-year university system in the United States. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I could have easily got my degree in 2 years had I not had to take all of these other core classes that had absolutely nothing to do with my major. I took 3 histories in high school. I took 4 Englishes in high school. Did I need to take 3 histories again in college? You know, it's like, did I need to take 4 science classes in college that had absolutely nothing to do with my degree? Taking another chemistry, and I took chemistry in high school. So I feel like this is just another way that the university system makes money off of the students. And students are customers.
Yeah.
And I want everyone to understand, like, students are customers for the
Yeah,
university.
I agree. I love how you talk about this discussion. That's why I wanted to call in today, because I went to like a no-name college, 4-year school, but it's called Moravian College. No one here probably has ever heard of it. It's like Quakers, but I really liked where Moravians came from. It was one of the first colleges in America that accepted women, and I was like, that's so cool. Like, I love where they're coming from. They have progressive potential. But when I got there, I was just a brand. I did all the extracurriculars, but it was really just advertising for the school. Like, I was part of an activities council, which was like the student government. And really what I was supposed to do was make Moravian look good. But I was like dying on the inside. I was like, I had to go to work after doing 2 labs, you know, all of this nonsense. And then I had to come back and be like, this school is amazing. Please come in, kids. Enjoy your stay. And it was just like, but don't talk about how in debt you're going to be, because I have to advertise for the school. And it's just another corporation to me. I didn't feel like anyone actually cared about me as a student. I couldn't find any mentors. I liked the teachers. I liked the community. But again, it was also cliquey. But it felt like high school 2.0 because it was a small school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And I just wanted to, like, because I can touch on so many notes. Like, I went to the 4-year school, and then I went to a community college after, because I had to leave the school because I took out a Sally Mae loan. Sally Mae. Oh God. I have a vendetta. Because I took out a small loan, right? And I was actually just looking at my Sally Mae loan. And I had paid as much interest as I paid into the loan. And judging from that, by the time I pay the loan off, I will have paid as much as I borrowed in interest. So I will pay double. So I have so many things to say. I also wanted to touch on the Debt Collective, if anyone's heard of it. We'll be going to DC April 4th. So if anyone's in the area, please come out. And we're going to, ask Biden to cancel student debt, which I'm not going to pray for Biden to do anything for me, but just to build the power and say, hey, we're students, we matter.
Mm-hmm. Well, someone just said
I have
something.
so much to say, I can't even focus.
No, it's okay. Someone said something in the YouTube chat. They said that they thought that those extra classes were actually good for them. And I think that's fine. I think that's great if it works for you, but I think that should be an option. I don't think you should have to take, like, for me, I'm like, how many times do I need to read Beowulf? Like, really? Like, like how many grades? Like, so for me, it was just like, I didn't find those classes useful, but I think if you want to do that, you should have the option to, but some of us don't want to do all that. We just want to get straight to what we need to take for our major and just do what we need to do. I mean, it's just another way for the university to get money in my opinion.
If it was free, like if we didn't have to spend thousands of dollars, like just join a book club. Like, I'm an educator. I love to learn. Like I graduated high school in 2015, where everyone told me, go to college. It's the best thing you can do if you're smart. Everyone said I was smart, so I went to college. And I went to college. I'm a high achiever, so, and I'm still going through life, doing the best I can. But I was a neuroscience major, and I wanted to go to med school. Like, that was like my big thing. So I did all of these science classes. I really didn't even have time to do a lot of the extra stuff, even though I did go to a liberal arts school, which you have to you have to do languages and all that stuff, which I love. But then it does get to a point where it's like, I just need to get what I need so I can make money, because I am poor.
Yeah,
And it's just like, I feel like they want to pretend like that, like all of these colleges, that my vendetta is the colleges. I want the colleges to say something. They get to pretend that we're just, everything's peachy keen. And that is just a lie. Like, they're just lying to us. They want us to pretend we're not living in a reality. And it's like, you want us to learn from you, but you guys don't even live in reality. How is, like, what is going on? And then I also, because when I had to drop out of school, which sucked because I lost scholarships, which I worked hard to get, that sucked. So talk about meritocracy. Why do I get to lose a scholarship? I tried to join the military, and because I had car debts and I was tired of working at restaurants. And the only reason why I didn't join the Army that day was because I was overweight, which was like, oh, thank God, the one time you're overweight, it saves you. But they really wanted me to, I was like overweight. It was like, we tried everything because they really wanted me to join the military. But I left and I never came back. And I don't recommend anyone join the Army, but that's a personal thing. But I get when people have to do it because I do want the education, but once you are in it and you just see it's an elitism. It's just trying to get us to conform. They want us to conform, you know, like you're not going to go to college and like learn about oppression. It's just not going to happen. Maybe, I don't even know. Like, I didn't take women's studies or anything, and I don't think there's anything. Because I saw a couple comments where people are like, do a degree that matters. And at the end of the day, even the degrees you study don't even matter. Most people don't get jobs in their degrees. It just doesn't happen.
They don't. No, they don't. And I just want to interrupt you real quick for that. Thank you so much for saying that. No, they don't. And I think that's important for people to know. Most of the people do not get jobs in the field that they went to school for. And I've seen this time and time again where kids major in, I think you have a better chance when you go into more of the STEM fields. But even with those, I've seen students struggle to get like jobs. Yeah. And because they didn't pass the tech interview, because they have to do a technical interview and they have to do a regular interview. So I think one of the biggest problems that we have, at least with millennial generation, some of us went to college and majored in fields that actually had jobs at that time. But by the time that we graduated from college, those jobs were far and few. And so that's another thing. How do you know that what you major in is even going to there's going to be a job market for it by the time that you graduate?
Yeah, we're asking for so much from people. Like, I literally despise when people say, oh, you took out that money. I literally just turned 18 years old and they brought me into the office with, I was raised by my grandparents. So I was with my grandmother, and I'm a first gen college student. So I did everything on my own for one. And they were like, do this. This is a great idea. And the lady's just marketing to me, by the way. She's just telling me how great my life is going to be. She doesn't actually know my life. And I'm just like, yeah, like college, of course. Like, why would I not go to college? And I don't think people think about that enough. Like, this is just the system this is the machine that we're in. And right. It's a game. It's a game. Like, go to college because I don't even know if I'm done with college, right? Like, I have an associate's because I went back to community college, which community college is great. I would recommend, if you're going to college, do the community college. Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
No worries. But I am going to go ahead and get to the next caller, but thanks so much for calling in.
I'm happy to talk to you. Maybe I'll call again some other time.
All righty. Okay, I'm going to bring in the next caller, Matt. But really quick, I did want to add something here because I don't like to just, talk about the problems. I like to talk about possible solutions as well. And two of the things that I recommend, and I mentioned this recently on Ron Paclone's show. Number one option is you can go to community college. There are degrees, associate degrees that you can get that actually, some of those fields pay more than the fields that require a bachelor's degree. For example, I have a friend who's a dental hygienist. She went to community college, did 2 years. She was making more than me, And I went to school for 4 years and I was an academic advisor. And then I went to grad school because sometimes to move up in higher ed, you have to have the master's degree. So she was making more than me and she didn't have any student loan debt. So I don't want people to definitely, please don't look down on community colleges, but then also you can go to community college for 2 years and then transfer to a 4-year university. But when doing that, and as someone who is an administrator, I do want to forewarn you, please make sure that your credits, all of them from the community college, transfer over to the school you're trying to go to, because sometimes those colleges will tell you, oh yeah, we transfer people over to that school all the time, but they don't tell you that some of your credits may not transfer over. So I do have to give people that tip and that tidbit. Gonna go ahead and bring in Matt. You're the next caller. Matt's on.
Hey, Sabby, how are you guys doing there?
Hey, how are you?
Doing all right, doing all right. Love you guys' this show, by the way. And I'm glad that you kind of led in there with the solutions more so. I do believe that college isn't worth it at this time. To me, I would believe that trades would kind of be the way to go at the moment. Electrical, plumbing, mechanical, working on cars, things of that nature, welding, heavy machinery, security, things of that nature. But and I say that because I feel like that would be a proactive way to go as far as we see with the capitalist system. One, those will be jobs. One, like you said, you can go to a community college 2 years. So you're not going into debt, because this kind of also touches on what you and Jewel was speaking about as far as we are customers. So these institutions are pretty much, Walmart. They're trying to get us to purchase as much as possible. That's why they have us take classes we don't need. So knowing that, we got to make sure that our purchase is worth it. With jobs that we could possibly use to choke the system that is choking us.
Right. No, that's definitely a good point. And I'm glad that you mentioned like trades as well. We do need more people to go into the trades. I feel like that used to be more popular in this country. My parents told me when they were in school that they taught like wood shop, just like in high school, like it was just a thing. And then little by little, they removed that from a lot of schools. And that's unfortunate. We don't really learn how to work with our hands the way that we should.
Exactly. And so, and to me, that was a whole nother thing of the federal government trying to take over education, taking those elements out, because to me, that's how the Black Panthers were able to sustain their public or their community organizations that they had. People had woodshop skills. They had mechanical skills. Same thing with medical. That was another thing I noticed during the protest last year. Made me want to study EMT, but we need more doctors on our side. And when I say our side, I'm just more so the working class side. When sometimes you have the medical services in legion with the police and they're not helping, you have comrades down. So just different things where, and like I said, that's also another thing that the Panthers had. They had their own medical centers because they had people, studying and from the backgrounds of medicine and things of that nature. But things that we could use to help the community, trades. We know the infrastructure is about to go down here. We know that we may have to be, communities may have to be in charge of making sure infrastructure is okay for them to receive food, things of that nature. Your food shortages earlier that you were speaking about. But yeah, so that to me is more so the thing. And also just to speak on what Kusha was saying, I feel like liberal arts and liberal literature or literature arts, they'll always be important. That's why the Renaissance was so important. We'll always have to study. We'll always have to push the human mind. So like those will always be important. But sadly, like also what he said with the capitalist system and where we are right now, I feel like we're in the fighting position. So we got to get to the fight. Not only that, not feed the federal debt or the federal government anymore for jobs that's not paying, jobs that they're not giving us. So, and if we could get jobs that we can choke them out, electrical jobs, things of that nature, then the power would go back more so to the working class.
Agreed. Well said. Thank you so much for calling in, Matt. I'm going to get to the next caller.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and take the next caller, and that is Eric. Another Eric. The Erics are popular, you guys. All right, Eric,
Yes.
you are on the mic.
Hey, so yeah, college is definitely not worth it. I would say if it was, the best scenario would be if you're in STEM. And even then, not all STEM is treated equally. And so yeah, that has to be said too. The thing about it is, like, why do we even have student loan debt in the first place? If you told, like, say for instance, like the French people, they had to pay $50,000 in student loan in tuition, they'd be protesting in like 5 minutes flat.
Yep.
I mean, it's how it goes back to, as a country, do we actually care? And the answer still continues to be no. And I'm trying to tell my high schoolers, because like I said, I'm teaching math now. I'm trying to tell my high schoolers, listen, you need to start doing more reading outside of school too.
Yes.
Because this college shit, you may not want to go to trade school. College is ridiculously unaffordable. You're gonna have to do something. You're gonna have to do some other reading outside of this. Because, like I said, K through 12, what? We don't teach everything, and that's being kind.
Yep. No, you're right about that. I'm glad you brought up STEM. I want to add something to that. Here's the thing I've noticed too when it comes to STEM education, and I'm only speaking for the Boston area in particular. Having been like on the admission side, one of the things that used to bother me is that they did not seem to want to admit many domestic students into these competitive STEM programs in the United States. They wanted to admit international students. And the reason being is because they're looking solely at two things, right? They're looking at those GRE scores, those GMAT scores, and they're looking at their GPA. And if they don't make it past those two, they don't even make it to the rest of the application. And that was one thing that used to drive me crazy, where you may have a student that went to University of Florida. They may have a 3.7 GPA. Their GRE score, their GMAT score may not have been too high, but if you actually look at the rest of their application, then you would see that they also had a part-time job while they were in undergrad. They also had extracurricular activities. But for some of them, they don't even make it to that part because they're focused solely on the test scores. And so what happens is a lot of the domestic students in the United States do not get into those competitive STEM programs. So in the Boston area in particular, most of those STEM jobs are going to internationals. And no shade on that or whatever, but what that does say to me, it says something to me about the math and science programs that we have in K through 12 in this country that are not preparing American students to get into those competitive STEM programs. So it's a big problem. And I think that these coding boot camps that are coming up, I think that is another alternative way that people can go instead of having to spend the money for a 4-year university. I think that's another avenue. But even with those programs, if you don't have the quantitative skills that are necessary to succeed in those programs, you still will struggle. And if you struggle in the STEM courses, you will struggle with the technical interview and you will not get the job. So again, this goes all the way back to the K through 12 public education system that we have in this country. Why aren't we teaching American kids these competitive math courses, the same ones that the kids are learning in South Korea, that they're learning in China, which is where we recruit a lot of our students from here in Boston? Why don't we have those competitive courses? Why aren't we teaching them the same level of chemistry and engineering courses that the kids in Germany are being taught, which, by the way, they can go to college in Germany for free. So that says something to me about the public education system. Again, it just all goes back to that for me. I feel like we're not setting these kids up to succeed in this country. And my advice to high school juniors and seniors who still want to go to a 4-year traditional college, but they can't do so without taking out a lot of student loans, my advice to you is to go to school abroad in a country like Germany, where you can go to school for free.
Perfectly said. And at the end of the day, it's just like, well, apparently we don't consider it profitable enough to educate our own kids. Why is that even a conversation where we make this profit based? What we should be doing it just because there are kids. That should be the end of that. Like, it's like this stuff, and I know it's not the same, but like it's the principle of the whole CRT stuff. You can't talk about everything. It's just like why are you? I get the example I gave for my students was basically all of us as teachers are effectively handcuffed, and like you have higher ups. No, you can't do that. You can't go here. Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
What the hell? We have all this to give. It's free essentially. It's a public good. I don't know. Our country is pathologically insane.
No, I hear you. But thank you so much for calling in, Eric. I'm gonna get to the next caller, but well said.
Appreciate it.
All right, going to the next caller, and this is Steve. What's going on, Steve?
Hello, Sabrina. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Fine, thanks. I like that you're talking about this, but I guess I have a question. Like, is it worth it? Well, it depends on what you want to get out of it, right? So it sounds like most of the conversation has been oriented around income generation. Is that correct?
Well, I guess so. It's more so in 2022. Is college still worth it today?
Huh. So I think a lot of the other callers had mentioned like go into STEM or go into coding and all these things. And I have a humanities degree. Now I'm fortunate or unfortunate, depending on your perspective, was able to graduate college without debt with my undergraduate degree. I graduated with a history degree in 2007. To your point, the financial crisis basically erased any prospects, especially for those of us with humanities degrees.
Yeah.
I wound up joining the military, like another one of your callers mentioned. I went into the Air Force, and while I was there, I utilized a tuition assistance program and was able to get a master's degree in international relations. I worked in air traffic for 12 years, which was my trained career field in the military. And then I decided it was not the best thing for me emotionally, mentally, physically, etc. And so I'm actually back in school on my GI Bill going to a community college where there are a lot of trades programs. And many of the programs at that junior college are getting people into careers like within 2 years. And a lot of that's in forestry, in agriculture, in heavy equipment, in construction skills. And so I've seen a mix of various ways to educate yourself and put yourself in a better financial position. And I don't regret at all having 2 degrees, including a master's degree, that I never use to generate income for myself. However, the point I wanted to make is that studying in those disciplines has given me a ton of perspective. And it has allowed me to make decisions in my life outside of career, outside of the hustle to be emotionally equipped to deal with the things we're seeing today. The food price spike you were talking about earlier, I anticipated that, knowing the process of our society coming to be, and recognizing that that was a short-term thing and would not persist indefinitely. It was not sustainable. And so I have secured myself a small postage stamp, and I have garden, I have chickens, I've grown pigs on my land, broiler chickens, so meat chickens, bunch of different fruit trees, vegetables, and we're trying to do some value-added, like, food production stuff to produce an income for ourselves. But I would have never made these decisions and been in a spot where, like, people are freaking out about COVID and early on, right? And then people are freaking out about food prices and conflict in Europe, et cetera, so forth. And, like, all of this is, like, just happening for almost exactly the way that I anticipated, and being prepared for that by having a secure place of food, by having some solar panels and a fixed rate mortgage and all that. I realize not everybody is going to get to that place or can get to that place, but, like, my education, although it did not directly generate income for me, has prepared me in other ways. That was my point.
That's a good point as well. I have a quick question for you. If you did have student loan debt, would you feel differently about the degrees that you got if you did end up with student loan debt?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if they weren't generating income, like, doesn't make a ton of economic sense to take out debt for something that doesn't produce an income. And I guess my point is that, like, you know what you need. So make decisions based on that. But I mean, you have to make a financial decision. So, like, anybody that got stuck with debt, and then in 2008, and we're like, shit, there's no jobs. Like, yeah, that's a rough bind. But I have a lot of, all of my classmates were able to eventually secure gainful employment, especially those in STEM. My engineering friends never had a problem getting a job. But even my friends in communication with English degrees, business degrees, other ones with history degrees, they all have gainful employment at this point. So in that sense, I guess it does set you up in some ways. But yeah. Did that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I noticed also this is another thing I was saying about the military industrial complex. When you graduated during that time, the 2008 housing crisis, I remember all that. It was crazy. But you had an option. You said, you know what, I can join the military, and that's income, right? Like that's reliable income. But this goes back to what I was saying before about the military industrial complex. I believe is the reason why they won't give us free public college in this country, because that's one of the effective recruiting tools that they use, especially when they go into the low income communities. That's one of the tools that they use to recruit people.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And actually, I'm involved with a group called Gamers for Peace. If you'd be interested, I could send you information. But it's a bunch of us vets in Veterans for Peace, and Gamers for Peace is like a working group within Veterans for Peace. And they're doing counter recruitment on Twitch and stuff like that, because, like, the military is hard recruiting folks in gaming spaces. And you're absolutely correct. I consider myself a poverty draft, right? Like, I couldn't have employment, and my partner at the time needed, like, a surgery. And so it was both for lack of a job, but also for healthcare. So yeah, the reason we don't have public education and public healthcare is because it would affect recruiting numbers. It's the same reason Kamala Harris wouldn't release prisoners from California state prisons, which is the state I live in. Because, like, the state needs that workforce. And, I don't need to tell you, I'm preaching to the choir, but, like, that's what the prison system is for. Like, is for creating free labor with slave labor. But anyway, yeah, I'm a permaculture designer too, and I help teach through Earth activist training. And because of lack of access for especially, like, people of color, like, we have full scholarship to our programs. Anybody could just Google Earth Activist Training and look it up. Especially if you're a person of color and interested in food production, absolutely check that out, because we have a scholarship for a program. I think I paid $1,800 to get my permaculture design certificate, and we offer the classes for free to certain underserved groups. So check that out, and thank you for taking my call.
All right. Thanks so much for calling in, Steve.
Bye now.
All right. I'm going to bring in Callin. Who is the next caller? Callin, you're on Callin. You're on the mic. Oh, I think you're muted. You have to unmute. If you have in headphones, that'll affect it too.
Yeah, I got it. How you doing?
Hey, Callin.
Thanks for having me on again. So as a teacher, I think about this a lot. Just thinking in terms of, is college worth it? And honestly, right now, if this were maybe a decade or so ago when I wasn't as involved in politics, I was that person, who would say, yes, you have to go to college, you need it, whatever. And I encourage, young people to go to college. Now, I'm kind of mixed on it, but for different reasons. I think a lot of people are talking about STEM, which is fair, but I think the reality is, given the system that we're in, if your job requires you to have a license in order to do that job, such as law, medicine, education as a teacher, you have to have a college degree. And I remember, I think it was Brianna Joy Gray on her podcast not too long ago made this point. It's, you're encouraging the working class to get a trade if they cannot afford college, and who would have access to these, to these fields that I mentioned? It would be the elites. So, and more often than not, they're usually white. So you're going to have the working class, which usually often consists of people of color in like the trades, and then you're going to have the elites who are going to be in these other fields like law, medicine, education. And as an educator, like especially in the teaching force, the majority of people who are in the field are white, whereas the majority of students that are currently in schools right now are often of color. So it will create a two-tier system as far as, only if you're working class, you have access to these fields. And then if you have the money, then you have access to these fields, which I don't think is necessarily right. However, I would say this, and I tell students now, I think it depends. Like, is college worth it? I think, especially if you want to get into these fields that I mentioned, you have to do your research and really weigh the cost if it's worth it for you to go into debt. Like for me as a teacher, I went into early childhood, which it's typically low paying. However, I went into that field in part because I remember telling my dad many years ago, if I was like, let's say, an elementary school teacher or even high school, I would be guaranteed maybe an interview because I'm a male and person of color, but I may not be guaranteed a job. Whereas in early childhood, I'm more likely to be guaranteed a job because I'm desired in the field. But the catch is I won't get paid that well, relatively. So, and I wish I kind of thought about it when I was younger, that to kind of weigh that risk-cost scenario. I think for me, as far as being in the field, I think in certain ways it was worth it. But, the downside is I'm still, in debt that I'm still paying off. So I think it really just depends as far as your field. But as I said, you know, if you want to go into these fields, which requires you to have a license, they're tied to college education. And so if you don't have the means, that would exclude many people in the working class to be able to go into those fields. And I think that in of itself is a problem.
I totally hear you. And another thing I want to add too about the teaching license in Massachusetts, I don't know how it is for the state that you're in, Callin, but in Massachusetts, they're sending teachers back to go get new licenses like every other year that they have to pay for. And it's like $500 like for a license. And I'm like, they have to pay for it with their own money.
Right. I mean, I think you know this, but I used to live in Massachusetts. So my first teaching credentials were in Massachusetts. And like you go to college, you have to pay for that. And then in order for you to get the license, you have to pay for that too. And, and if you fail the exam, you have to take it over again, which is more money. And often than not, that teachers of color often than not had to take these exams more than once because they're not necessarily prepared, or their college work may not necessarily prepare them well to be able to pass the teaching exams the first time. So I was very fortunate, like for many of my licenses, because I got a few. For the most part, I was able to pass them the first time. But for many people, that's not necessarily the case. And often I found, as I said, there are people of color who had to take them more than once. And these are the people who are not making the kind of income to be able to take it, multiple times. So yeah, you're right. But I think that's that way across the board. It's not just in Massachusetts. It's the same thing in DC. But, so there's a lot of gatekeeping, that I think, especially in these fields, you kind of alluded to this earlier, that we often don't talk about, especially in these fields that require you to have a license. Like if you think of law, and if you have to take the bar, you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars for that, and if you don't pass, that you don't get a job, and it takes a long time to study, and you can't necessarily work, or you have to work part-time in order to study for like the bar in order for you to pass it. So I think it's just a lot more nuanced conversation versus saying, like it's not worth it. I think depending on the circumstances, I think unfortunately we have to take that loss risk scenario as far as, do you want to go into debt possibly in these fields? But I think that's kind of an overarching situation as far as it doesn't allow the working class to enter these fields, which more often than not will be often dominated by the elites, which in itself is a problem.
Good points, Callin. Thanks so much for calling in. I want to go ahead and take the next caller.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. All right, I'm going to bring in the next caller, and this is BC. BC, you are on the mic. What's going on? I think you just have to unmute.
You hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello? Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so there's a lot here. And I've heard different things from a few people, and they've covered some of the points. But in terms of, is college worth it? My answer is no. Is education worth it? Yes. So the way education is in this country, it goes back for over 100 years. You go to elementary school and the following schools, junior high and high school, to learn how to go to college, right? And it's just paying into that system. And it's not like college doesn't teach you anything. I think the person, Eric or Steve or whoever, said they learned a lot, their degree took them here. And I'm sure that's true for a lot of people, but this is the new era. what was true then will not work for the generation going forward necessarily. We need to flip how we look at education. You can't just say let's go from here, go to college, and it's okay to keep cycling 45,000 a semester and so forth. Me, I have an IT background. I learned more from my online class that was free at the time than I did from the professor in class. You have these tools now. When I was going in, I had to read and have issues. I had to reach out to someone and a mentor. Now we have YouTube. And it's insane how much education is up there. You have YouTube, Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, Khan Academy. So if you want to pay, you can. But people are giving this up for free. So we need to. So let me just say this. Prior to online degrees now, which are all the rave, back in the day it was called correspondence degree, and those were a joke, a punchline, Saturday Night Live, and so forth. People barely wanted to, oh, you have a correspondence degree? It was that type of thing. But now we have, look at our conversation now, right? I am watching you on YouTube on an app, and you're able to transmit your points to me, and we're interactive. This can work. The only thing schools need to do as far as colleges, we can use that wasted time for the high schools at night, where you can use that as a proctor to take the test, because that's all you need. We can take certified courses and get straight to the point. No need to, I had to go back over English and this and that to take, I had to retake classes in college, all just taking the money that I was putting in. But if you did something like this, and this can all be on blockchain too, right? You can use the IT infrastructure to do all of this now. Our classes could be online. We can learn, and we just need to go to a high school at night like you do when you vote to proctor our tests. There's not a job I can think of where you need to go into that building other than the medical field, or unless you want to fly planes for the military. I can't say the name of the company, but I've worked out of, what do you call those? A government contractor, military, what have you. They have helmets now where you can put the helmet on and you can see the military vehicle. You're touching it with the glove. You're taking off the part. So this will work for auto mechanics. This will work for anything. And now we have the people use them to play video games now. So you can use VR to go forward with things as it relates to HVAC and anything you need to repair. And then you can go on campus and take a practical. This whole thing is just sucking money out from the 99% into the 1%. And then what do they do with all these endowments and so forth? I used to think when I was younger that they help send people to school with that money. Joke's on me. They build a new building. They don't pass this on to the students. So like Google, for instance, they have a professional certification course. AWS has one and Azure has one. And I took some of those online. Where I work offered a university, right? So a lot of jobs are making their own universities using those, teaching you, and you can go forward with that whether you leave the job or not. This is all a con. Education is key. College is not, and we're set up to just keep transmitting our money. And this is an issue that should be on the table because we didn't have this virtualization in the past. You always hear people say, oh, well, you need that interactivity. Oh, but how about the memories, the drinking, and this and that? You can do all that on the side. And if you want to travel to a new state, then the money you save not going to college, do that with it. The only thing you should need to pay for when you go to college, it shouldn't cost $20, $18, or even $10 a semester. All you need is a computer, a couple of monitors, and the camera, and let's go. And that's it. Because a lot of jobs now are also accepting those Google, at least for now, those Google IT professional supports. And in my field, it doesn't matter the education. Like, so in IT, the team I was a part of is a global team. So everyone, they all have a better education than me because theirs was free. So if we really cared about moving America forward as a collective, as far as educating our students and so forth, we would do the same thing. But like everything else, we like to kid around, give talking points, and put people in office who shouldn't be. Like you talked about Joe Biden earlier, and all I could think of is he's not the president that we want, but he's the president that we deserve. And I know you know where that line came from. Start night. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so much for calling in, BC. Good points there. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the next caller, which is Mitchell. And Greg will be my last caller that I take because I realized that, again, I'm running short on storage. I got to fix that. So, Mitchell, you are the next caller. You're on the mic. Just got to unmute. Mitchell's on the mic. Just got to unmute.
Is that working?
Yeah.
Okay. I am a teacher, and it really depends. And a facet that I don't think I've heard mentioned is the difference, because I graduated from school in the 80s. And one thing that happened in the 80s that isn't being discounted for what's happening with the kids that are leaving school today. Jobs were plentiful because we made things in the United States. And a majority of the things that were sold back in the 80s were sold to other companies to make things. So one company that would, let's say, make a steering wheel, they bought forms to be used on the floor. There might be 1,000 different pieces of paper that fluttered about the floor as it went. A lot of that's digital now, so those jobs are gone. But even before that, a lot of those jobs went away and are still done in China because that is where the stuff is done. So they buy it locally. There used to be a town in Illinois called Elk Grove Village where it supplied all of the factories in the Chicagoland area, and a lot of other towns supplied things too. But you could start with anything technical, go to Elk Grove Village and actually go right to the factory and say, I need to get this done, something about I need a mold made, whatever. You could get it done there. And all of these jobs, that mean that all of the factories just died there. Just all of a sudden, there wasn't any need because they weren't factories that sold to people. They were factories that sold to other factories. Rockford, Illinois used to be like where all the screws and bolts and nuts came from. You go out into Erie, Pennsylvania, and whatever. So what would happen was that a lot of the liberal arts or the business administration jobs or degree people, they would get jobs in those companies. And the degree was pretty much, hey, I understand business. If I got a business administration degree, understand business. These would become the people that would be the jobbers, the purchasers, and all of these people that did jobs for what happens in the factories that supplied other factories that supplied other factories. And so much work was wound up in the energy to make things. When Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton decided that the best thing for the United States was to get all the jobs offshore and to collect money from the other companies into their foundations, that they killed all these jobs. So that everybody, like Andrew Yang, I talked to Yang, I like Yang, but never could get it out of his head. He kept saying, automation killed everything, automation killed everything, automation. No, offshoring killed it. The Chinese didn't take our jobs. We destroyed the jobs because they weren't necessary here, because the jobs that we really needed in the United States were the jobs that supplied the factories that supplied other factories. And majority of that could still come back. Of course, the paperwork's going to be easier now. The computers handle all that stuff. And the robots don't take jobs. Usually, when a robot comes into a factory, the amount of output increases so much that you have to hire lots of extra people to handle it. And of course, some of those jobs get automated. And that comes up to the next point. There's this lag of thought. So it takes a while for us to incorporate into a degree what people are going to do. But the changes are happening so fast that we don't have time to get it incorporated into school. We have meetings twice a semester where we meet with area businesses and say, what skills do your people need? What can't your people do? What do we need to be adding to our classes? And we have a limited amount of time that we're going to have these students. We have one of our STEM groups, or techs, we have them going 5 semesters instead of 4 because there was just too much important stuff to get out of the way and get going. We have more stuff we want to add, but we would have to have them go for a 4-year degree. So we need more people going to the 4-year degree to get out into supplying them. And we need to have a system that is more coordinated, not just with the few universities that we have deals with, but a standard pathway for everyone. And the second thing that really, really kills all of it is not everybody makes it through on an engineering degree. About 1/3 of the students that start actually finish. We have no means at all in our university system for those students that don't make it to have an alternative path. Once they have a problem, they're on their own, and that has to change. We need a secondary system where we help them get back on another path. Say, okay, what blocked you in this field? Is there a way that whatever was the disadvantage in that field, could that be an advantage in another? And how can we get that student back on? And we need to fund that. That process right now is totally thrown on the students. It doesn't come out in the tuition, because once the student's having problems, they're not able to actually pay. So we need a system where we have people. We have people that need jobs. And that brings up another thing, a complaint about paying people welfare or paying people other money. We currently do that. We currently have selective enhanced income. We provide income, great income, to people that tend to make a lot of donations through jobs like insurance agents. Well, that's not welfare, is it? Yes, it is. What service, what extra value do they really add to your life? Do they help you get the care? No. They actually will fight you on the payment and everything. And if we were to streamline it, and one thing in a factory is we don't move something unless we need to move it. Well, and we don't do extra operations that don't add value. So if we take a look at someone in a factory, let's say the child of the CEO that's given a job just to give him income, it's far better in a factory for that CEO just to give the child the money and not have them come in and mess up the factory. And this is how I view insurance agents. We're giving them money so that they can have jobs. And we're saying, look at all the jobs we've created. No, we should not be creating jobs to create jobs to give people money. If we're creating jobs to give people money, we should just give them the money. It's 100% more efficient. We'll pay 3 times as much if we create a job to make them to get the money. Instead, we need to start thinking that, hey, what jobs do we need to do? And there was some inaccuracies I need to clear from earlier. In Europe, you do not go to school for free. Of course, it's in your income. No, many of the European countries pay the students to go. So if you're in Scandinavia or Germany, you get money for going to school as long as you're making good grades, and that's a great incentive to go. Also, for Denmark, for instance, at 10th grade, you decide whether you're going into tech or you decide whether you're going into university. And at that, you get on two different paths. And at that point, those students that want to be tech, they get a wonderful school. When I go into a European factory and work with it, there wasn't a single person that wasn't incredibly knowledgeable about the operation of their machine. And I found this all over, that they just, this idea. Finland, it is illegal to charge tuition. All of the schools are funded the same, and they feel that if a teacher, if someone pays tuition, that one student is going to be treated better than the others. So in order to make sure that all of the students get an equal chance, you have to fund all of the schools. And right now at the schools, we, as teachers, we are overwhelmed. All the funding is at the bare minimum. So I don't do research. I get to school, I do my work. I'm teaching class from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I got a 20-minute lunch, and there's no time allocated for any kind of paperwork. You're expected to do the paperwork for the class on your time. That is slavery. No other job are you required to work all day, then go home and do your paperwork.
Yep.
And realistically, we need to say, hey, let's go back to Finland. Finland has fantastic schools. How many teachers are in each classroom of 20 students? 3. Yep. You have the main teacher, the one that's going. You have one that's handling discipline or helping students, and a second one that's helping students. All the time, they're currently wandering around the students, and one teacher gets tired, next one pops in. So teacher can go out anytime, go off, go to the restroom, go off, get a coffee, whatever. Next teacher can jump in, and they can be prepared. So one thing is, when you're not in front of the class all the time, you can be much more prepared for when you're on deck, when you're going. And we need more of that time. When a teacher takes over their first 3 years in the United States, they're just absolutely trash. And we need to stop that. And, it's just so overwhelming. And as far as you can get the education on YouTube, no, you can't. You can feel like you're getting the education on YouTube. One of the problems with YouTube that you don't have, that's another issue, is that is so much misinformation. That sometimes things that seem like they are is how people report it. For instance, orbital mechanics. If you point a spacecraft straight down and you fire your engines, you are not going to go down. You're going to temporarily go down, but because you increase your orbit, you go up and you might hit something you're trying to avoid. The same thing is true in many other fields. There's other factors that need to be involved. Most of the time, whenever we say easy fix, let's use blockchain, we're not thinking about all the ramifications. Just like I said, providing jobs by making insurance agents have jobs, that's selective enhanced income. Basically welfare for the rich. We're not thinking about how we're giving the money. If we want to give all of these wealthy people that donate to the Democratic Party and Republican Party extra money, give them the money. And we would still be much better off getting our health care paid for and out of our own taxes and our own proper maintenance. The first thing we have to do, I'm not saying be an economic isolationist, but the first thing we have to do is reciprocal trade. Wipe out all the trade deals and say, with every country, we will trade fairly with you as you trade with us. Because since the 80s, every trade deal has benefited a politician, has not benefited the people, and a lot of. Oh, sorry, I'm probably taking too long.
Oh no, sir. I have a hard stop at 11 because of storage reasons. But I was going to say well said, but I just want to make sure I get to the other callers.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Mitchell. All right, TJ, you are up next on the mic. You'll just need to unmute.
Oh, hello. Hey, am I coming in okay, Sabby?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I was just gonna point out, everybody's personal situation is different. I mean, I can, everybody I can I'll touch on mine in just a second. I'm not trying to take up too much time. My wife has an associate's degree, and she went to school for psychology. She has an associate's degree in that, and she's still working at the same place. I know a guy that has a degree in computer science. It was a 6-year course, and he was a manager at Best Buy. He actually worked with me. He was my manager, my supervisor. My mom went to college. She has a degree in data coding and medical entry. She actually did work in daycare. Now my father's situation is he went to school for I think for EMT, and he became a truck driver. And I'm going to kind of follow his timeline for a little bit because it affects my situation now. My father, while he was driving 18-wheelers, he had an accident. He had a head injury, fell out of the truck, and he lost his memory. He couldn't, because diesel fumes was leaking into the cab of the truck, and we had a lawsuit against Freightliner, and they didn't fix the truck properly. And my dad had $1 million lawsuit out against him, but now he was making really good money when he was driving 18-wheelers, and he lost over $1 million in lost wages. He was driving for Busky at the time, Busky Trucking. It was either Busky or USA Trucking. I'm not really sure which one he was driving for, but he had to learn how to read and write all over again. He had to. He didn't know what hot and cold was. He lost, I think, some of his short-term memory, and he was been having seizures ever since. And like I said, we had a lawsuit against him. Freightliner, they were owned by Mercedes-Benz. They filed for bankruptcy, and my dad only ended up getting, I think, he did get some back, but he didn't make up for all the lost wages he had. So he ended up getting 2 jobs. Because after that he got enough money to get put a down payment on some land and a mobile home, and that's what they got. And he was driving and he was having seizures, and I was helping him. I was 16. My dad was going a lot of time in my life, and he got back into my life, and like I said, he was driving and he was having seizures, and he was driving, and he would have a seizure, and he'd pull over to the side of a road, and then he'd start driving again. So, I mean, I'm not trying to make too much about my situation, but that affected me from going to school. So, and now he has Parkinson's and he has dementia with Lewy bodies, and I couldn't go to school. I mean, I had to help. If I would have went to school, they would have probably lost the house because I had 2 jobs. My mom was working. My dad was working. He was working 2 jobs. He was falling off ladders. He would get up and bust his head open on the side of a door. And, like I said, it all depends on somebody's personal experience, man. And, I could probably do online classes now if I wanted to. But right now, I'm actually taking care of him. I'm taking care of my daughter. I'm trying to save on daycare. She actually starts kindergarten in August, so that's a good thing. But right now, it's just man, it's just I've been trying to help him out all my life, and my mom and him, and it just I was working at one point in time. I was paying 2 bills at 2 households, and I was working 110 hours a week for 6 months. I was sleeping in my car. I was falling asleep behind the wheel, and I had to I couldn't do it anymore. I just had to quit. I had to quit a job, and now I take care of him full time. So it's like I say, I know everybody's got. There's people out there that situation is a lot harder than mine, but I sacrificed my education for my family. And I do it again. And my wife she also tried to go to culinary school a while back. Well, she has gastroparesis, and that's she has Helicobacter bacteria in her intestines, which means she got sick from drinking contaminated water here locally here. and she went to school, and she wanted to be in the culinary arts, and her teacher said, "Well, you keep throwing up, so there's really no sense. It's just unhygienic for you to be in this field." So they told my wife, say, "Hey, you can't do this anymore." And she's actually still working at the same place. I mean, she still makes about $18 an hour. I mean, which is good pay, and she works in a call center. But like I said, man, you just you at some point in time, man, is school good? Yeah, if you can get it, if you can get like your either employer to pay for it, or if you can get if you can find some online classes that are like one guy said he took free online classes. I'm like, that's even better. But it's all about, you just really can't put yourself into a situation. But like I said, also too, you can't really, put your family into a bind either. It's like this can be related with healthcare. Like, I don't have health insurance. I'm not gonna put my family in debt if something happens to me. If I can't afford to go to the hospital, I can't afford a hospital bill. I can't afford for my wife to pay my college debt if something happened to me. Even just health wise. So, I mean, and yeah, I'm sorry. I'm gonna let you take the other callers, and thanks for taking my call, Sabby. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks so much for calling in, TJ. All right, I'm going to go to the next caller. It's Cool Blue. I just want to reiterate this again. The last caller is going to have to be Greg, because I do have a hard stop at 11 o'clock, just simply because I'm going to run out of storage space. Cool Blue, you are next up on the mic. So Vivian and No War, I'm going to have to remove you from the queue.
Hello, Sabrina.
Hello, Cool Blue.
Hi. One of your callers, Matt, this is about 9:50 p.m. Eastern time. We're both on Eastern time. I'm in Detroit, Michigan area. He touched on a number of things I wanted to mention, which included trades, but I also wanted to insert in this whole discussion about college. I'll let you know I was born in 1971 and turned 50 last year. I don't mind mentioning it because when I was getting close to graduating from high school, a lot of teachers, a lot of the parents of students, they figured it was incomprehensible to be able to survive as an adult if you did not go to college and graduate from college. So that was the attitude back then. And 30 years later, it has changed. But back then, that was their attitude. And mainly what they were thinking about was their children's ability as adults to be able to generate income, to be able to build a life. And here we are 30 plus years later. And I think one of the things we might not be really strongly asserting is that we have income problem for people here in the United States. I remember coming across that approximately 50% of people who are employed, their income is $35,000 or less per year, and that's before taxes. You're in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm in Detroit, Michigan. That can go better in Detroit, Michigan, but not so much in Boston, Massachusetts. Most expensive state in which to live is Hawaii, from what I remember, and the second is California. So that really doesn't fly. Also, I want to mention about college. There are some people who don't have the aptitude to go to college. And that's something that's also not being thought about by enough people. I mean, they'll act like college is just for anybody. It's not. It's different from when you were going to regular school as you were a minor. So these were just a couple things I wanted to touch on, and the call is really brief. But a lot of other people already mentioned some other things that were on my mind anyway, so this is pretty good. It's a pleasure to call in.
Thanks so much. Great to hear from you, Cool Blue. All right, guys, I'm going to take our last caller, which is Greg Bruce. Guys, go ahead and give me a thumbs up on Callin if you haven't had a chance to do so, and hit that like button on YouTube. All right, Greg Bruce, you are on the mic. Gotta unmute. Have to unmute yourself. I'll give it a second.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it was, for some reason, the unmute button was not responding at first. So yeah, a lot of good points I've heard. I have only got on since 10, so I missed part of it. First, I particularly what Mitchell was saying. It was refreshing to hear another person talk about manufacturing. No one in left spaces, it's not talked about as much as it should for a few different reasons. But at the same time, I will say I do have I've worked as a manufacturing engineer for how many years has it been? 15 years. Been that long. My degree was in mechanical engineering, but I've worked in the manufacturing side for about 15 years as a manufacturing engineer. And as far as robots and other forms of technology improvements that can improve production, yeah, in some cases, plants might see more output and hire more jobs. But the thing is that's only going to output's only going to spike for so long. Eventually, it's going to, if not level off, start to climb more slowly. So at that point, if you're continuing to increase your efficiency at the same rate, eventually you're going to say, okay, instead of how do we get more production out, it's how do we continue to meet demand as we continue to improve our profits. What do you do then? You reduce the cost. Companies do automation for a reason, and I've been present for these conversations. I've been involved with some of these projects. It's all right. How fast is this going to pay off? Are you going to? You're going to give me this investment, and you spread. When is the ROI going to pay off? Is it? And then some companies are very aggressive about it. Some say 2-year payoff. Some say like 3-year payoff. But they do it because it helps their bottom line, and you do get to a point where you are doing your output per person is increasing. Yes, you might add a technician, you might add a manufacturing engineer or a robot programmer, but the ratio is going to be like, you add one of them, you lay off 5 machinists. And you can actually see it in trends with the United States. And I do agree that outsourcing or offshoring manufacturing is why it went away. But automation is the reason why it's not really going to come back. If you look at the trends of manufacturing jobs, since the 2000s, it has been steadily plummeting. Sometimes plummeting not as fast as other times, but still going down. And manufacturing output plummeted in 2008, but has continuously grown since then. And so has the jobs, but at a much slower rate. And so that the jobs are nowhere near where they were in 2000. So what does that tell you? Manufacturing is coming back, but with using less people to do it. So that was my point. That automation didn't get rid of manufacturing, but it's the reason why. I hate to say it, but Obama was right when he said those jobs are not coming back. And sometimes, everyone has their 1 or 2 things they agree with, Obama on, and their 1 or 2 things they agree with, like, say, Trump on, if they're being honest. But some people say, like, Trump brought back manufacturing. I'm like, not really. It's just the trend was the same exact trend. The rate of growth was just continued. That's all that happened. So that's my just ramble about manufacturing. But anyway, I'll do the rest quick. I know you want to get off. But is college still worth it? It's an interesting question. You can look at it from a lot of different facets, and they're all kind of interesting to explore. So, start off, is it worth it purely economically? So when you take, let's just say your jobs, in a world where you're automatically going to make a higher income, but you're also going to incur a lot of debt, and what is the overall net result? I mean, that probably depends on what professions you're going into. I mean, I guess I'm kind of agnostic on where that's at right now. I think that if it's still generally financially advantageous to go to college, the advantage is shrinking. That's something I kind of want to look into more. But I mean, it depends on a lot of factors. And the other thing is, like, if you're comparing, let's just say, for example, it is financially advantageous, and you're just comparing two options. You say, I could be an electrician for this salary, or I can be a teacher for this salary, and it's just financially better for to be an electrician. Let's just say that is the case, but you want to teach. I mean, I know it's kind of cliche, and I might be echoing a lot of things that I've said, but like, you are, although it's not as measurable in dollars, there is the other value, and I'll say, okay, so there's the alternate forms of education. Now it's at the point where it's like, okay, well, so at what point is it college? So if we're comparing a higher ed university to a traditional university to just the online free stuff, I'm sure there's pros and cons, and I think that, like, the perfect education system might involve some elements of both. Like, as much as I think that there's a ton of issues with higher ed today, the elements of the concept of it, like being in a community. Like, I went to a smaller school, like 2,800, so I'm not sure if this experience is the same at bigger schools, but I think there is something special about being in a community, and I do think that, like, could it be structured differently? I would like to see more like, school work, so you're applying as you learn, but some sort of concept in which you do live in a community like that, in which you all have generally that same mission for 4 years or whatever amount of time is appropriate. So, maybe that's not for everyone either. Sorry, I'm kind of losing my train of thought there. So I think that, it's I'll go back to, like, saying, like, everyone's different. Yeah. So, like, you have to weigh, if there's an economic advantage to one way or the other, you have to weigh it, and it's not for everyone, and there's value in doing what you want to do. And, the question is, like, I'm someone who believes in free college, cancel student debt, and everything like that. Now, I guess what I would say, if someone says the answer is no, does your answer change if we implemented like those things? And if that's the case, if that changes your mind, then are we asking the right question? Maybe the root of the problem is something else. And I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with schmapitalism. So I'll leave it at that.
I think I need to do like a part 2 to this discussion, because I think, like, there's a lot to be said here. And that's a good point that you just brought up about the whole, about capitalism. Like, that's true. That's a good question. If public college was free in the United States, would those of us who said it's not worth it, would we still say it's not worth it? That's a good question. So I think I need to do like a part 2 to this conversation. Maybe not so much on YouTube, but maybe just on Callin, because I know there's a lot to be said here. But Greg, thanks so much for calling in. I do have to get ready to close out just because of the time. I have 2 minutes left. Oh, he disappeared somehow. I don't know what happened. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you so much, a kid, for the super chat. Sabby, thanks. Continuing to focus on important subjects. RBN truly understands what are folks' priorities. Hope you drink nice brew on Friday. I forgot to tell you guys what I was drinking tonight. This is an IPA. It's by Fiddlehead, and this is from Vermont. Really cool place if you like IPAs. Also, shout out to John McKinney for the super chat. Imagine if Ted Nugent held a fake severed head of Biden or Fauci like Kathy Griffin. Wouldn't be funny, but it's free speech. All right. Thanks for the super chat. Thank you so much. Thank you for the super sticker, Patty R. Thanks so much. And I have 1 minute left and I do have to head out. Everyone who joined me on Callin, thank you so much for joining me, for joining Sabby Sabs podcast on Callin. Oh, remember Saturday. Oh, shoot balls. Guys, I actually will be live tomorrow. I just almost forgot to tell you. I'm usually not live on the weekend, but tomorrow we're doing a ballot initiatives panel. So for those of you who've been asking me questions about ballot initiatives, I do have a panel for that tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All of us on the panel live in states that have ballot initiatives. We're going to tell you what they are, how you do ballot initiatives, and the ones that we have implemented that have passed and the ones that have not passed in an open discussion. So definitely come hang out with me tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you're going to learn about what you can do on the local level. Other than that, guys, you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.